Great to hear you and see you. Thank you.
Okay, okay, so welcome.
Perfect. Thank you.
San Diego County Board of Supervisors regular meeting and the San Diego County Fire Protection District meeting to order. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Before I call the roll, I would like to note for the record that all supervisors are participating via teleconference. As such, all votes will be handled by a roll call vote. With that, I will now call the roll. Supervisor Anderson. Supervisor Anderson? Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Here.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas here.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher here.
Anderson here.
All right, we will begin with the invocation. The invocation will be delivered by the Most Reverend Ramon Bejarano, Auxiliary Bishop of San Diego. We welcome you to our board meeting today, and we'll turn it over to you for the morning invocation.
Thank you. We pray this morning, Almighty God and Creator. You are the source of every blessing. I lift up this prayer together with my fellow citizens, asking for abundant blessings upon us. Bless our county, our nation, and our planet, especially with peace. Bless our County Board of Supervisors with wisdom, vision, and determination. Bless the local organizations who make a difference in the lives of other people. Bless and safeguard our healthcare professionals. Bless and accompany first responders and law enforcement. Bless and watch over our military here at home and overseas. Bless our educators in our schools, colleges, and universities. Bless with good health those who are sick, and give strength to those who are experiencing challenging times. Bless the rich social and cultural diversity of San Diego. Bless our local businesses and those who are seeking a job. Bless our soil with the rain we need. Bless our families with harmony and keep them safe. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The Pledge of Allegiance will be delivered by Jessica Clare's kindergarten class from Ashley Falls Elementary. And we welcome all of the kindergartners to our meeting this morning and look forward to you leading us in the pledge.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much to all the kindergartners for joining us, and thank you to your wonderful teacher, Jessica Clare, and we wish you all a great day at school today. Thank you, everyone. We'll now proceed with our proclamations. Vice Chair Nora Vargas and I will give the first proclamation honoring the African American Association of County Employees, and accepting this proclamation will be Dr. Keisha Clark. February is Black History Month, and this morning we are honored to recognize such an important group of county employees, the African American Association of County Employees. Their mission is crucial to the success of the entire county. This organization recruits and inspires county employees. The African American Association of County Employees connects with both county departments and community organizations to support diversity, equity, and inclusion. This results in an increase of career opportunities, cultural awareness, and community partnership for the county. They strive to advance a culture of inclusion to meet the needs of county employees and the communities it serves, while at the same time advocating for an inclusive and equitable environment where every employee feels valued. They diminish racism by addressing racial bias, disproportionality, disparities, and inequities involving the Black African American population and other communities of color that have been historically excluded. I want to thank all of our county employees and members for their participation, their dedication, and their work, not just on behalf of county government, but on behalf of the entire county. And I'm honored to bring this forward with my friend, Vice Chair Nora Vargas, and I will turn it over to her to say a few remarks as well.
It's a pleasure. In honor of Black History Month, I like to recognize and highlight the amazing work of our African American Association of County Employees as well. Through their organizing work, they've recruited, inspired, and as you mentioned, advocated county employees to connect with departments and community organizations to support diversity, equity, and inclusion. This has really increased career opportunities, cultural awareness, and community partnerships. They have elevated Black and African American thought leaders, community leaders, artists, and trailblazers in various aspects of life, professions, and industries, both at the local and national levels. Uplifting and elevating Black voices, they have advocated to diminish racism and enhance our county efforts to become anti-racist and address racial bias disproportionately, disparities, and inequities involving not just our Black and African American county employees, but their communities and neighborhoods that have been historically excluded from opportunities. Black history is not just highlighting and celebrating achievements, accomplishments, and venerable individuals, but is also learning and educating ourselves about systemic oppression, the pain, the struggles, the sacrifices, the trauma, and what those lessons and experience can teach us not only about ourselves and our society, but also about continuing to commit to doing better and being better within humanity itself, that we never dare repeat the sins within the history of our past, but commit to building healthier and stronger communities, and at the same time, move forward to a brighter, more loving future. I want to thank our African American Association of County Employees as we recognize the month of February as Black History Month throughout the county of San Diego. Thank you for all you do for our communities.
And I believe now we will turn it over to Dr. Keisha Clark.
Good morning. Good morning, board. Thank you so much. On behalf of ACE, I would love to receive this proclamation. We are honored to continue to serve the county at large and partner with the County of San Diego and our local community.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for all of the work that you all do. It's our honor to recognize you this morning and all of the collective efforts you make for our county. So thank you, Dr. Clark, and thank you to all of the members of your wonderful organization. The second proclamation will also be given by Vice Chair Vargas and myself, honoring Love Your Heart Month. Accepting this proclamation will be Jessica Newmeyer, Executive Director of the American Heart Association, and we will begin first with Vice Chair Vargas.
Chair, I am so proud to be championing with you Love Your Heart. Live Well San Diego has been committed in its mission to promote safe, healthy, and thriving communities, a vision that includes all sectors of our county: business, school, military, and veteran organization, faith-based, and community organizations, all about bringing positive change. We can't have healthy communities without a healthy heart, and organizations across North America are hosting Love Your Heart, an annual event that helps provide free blood pressure screenings for the public on Valentine's Day. High blood pressure isn't healthy. 75 million Americans are affected by its condition, 1 in 3 adults, which can lead to damaged blood vessels and more serious health complications. People of color throughout our country and locally have disproportionately high levels of blood pressure, a reality that has been compounded by the devastating effects of the COVID pandemic on communities of color. Last year, more than 3,800 participants were screened, and more than 22,000 were screened through Love Your Heart's sister event at Ama Tu Corazon, which reaches participants binationally in our border region. The Ama Tu Corazon Heart Health Awareness Campaign in Mexico has been an integral strategic part of our annual Love Your Heart campaign, and it is led by the County of San Diego's Barbara Jimenez and includes many partners on both sides of our binational region. By raising awareness of heart disease, we can empower residents throughout our county to take charge of their own heart health, support our cultural wellness, and strengthen both Love Your Heart and Live Well San Diego's efforts to ensure healthier and stronger communities. We are so proud to recognize and honor the incredible staff, organizers, and volunteers who contribute greatly to our county's health and safety. With more of this work, I'm happy to introduce my colleague, Chair Nathan Fletcher.
Thank you, Vice Chair Vargas. Since joining the Board of Supervisors, I've been extremely proud to champion this event every single year, now in its 11th year. The goal of this program remains to empower San Diegans to learn about heart health. We want to provide each and every one of us with the opportunity to know your number. The impacts of pre-existing heart disease has really come to the forefront during COVID. We've seen that many of the folks sickest with COVID-19 have underlying health conditions, with the most prevalent being high blood pressure. Untreated high blood pressure exacerbates the impacts of COVID-19 and has been incredibly deadly. And so the historic work we've done to promote health, promote wellness, promote overall heart health has just been emphasized of how important that is. And in the spirit, in recent years, we have recommitted and redoubled our efforts to this program. This year, we're continuing our partnership with the San Diego Blood Bank and encouraging San Diegans to step up and donate blood if you are able. A CUPIA heart disease risk study identified an 88% reduced risk of heart attack in people who donated blood as few as 1 or 2 times a year. And that's because each time you donate blood, you get a health screening, including checking your blood pressure. A lot of folks are unaware that they may have high blood pressure. And the simple act of checking it, getting that health screening can begin to get you into treatment. We all know folks who have been impacted by heart disease, and the numbers show we are either one of those impacted or part of a circle, a very small circle of someone who is. And so as we get ready to celebrate Valentine's Day, there is no better time to love your heart. And with that, be it proclaimed by myself and all the members of the County Board of Supervisors on this 8th day of February 2022, that we commend Love Your Heart for its significant contribution to the health and wellness of county residents, and do hereby declare February 12th through the 20th as Love Your Heart Week throughout San Diego County. And with that, I would like to welcome Jessica Newmeyer, Executive Director of the American Heart Association, who is representing the Love Your Heart Steering Committee this morning. Jessica, we turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher and Vice Chair Vargas. Heart disease is the #1 killer worldwide, and stroke ranks second globally. Even when those conditions don't result in death, they cause disability and diminished quality of life. We want to see the world free of cardiovascular disease and stroke. With so much at stake, the American Heart Association is proud to partner with the County of San Diego in the annual Love Your Heart campaign.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jessica, and thank you to all the participants.
Chair Fletcher, I was sharing my screen.
That looks great. You have a wonderful group there.
All right, and so we're joined in these efforts by some amazing partners. I'd like to take a moment to thank some of the many colleagues who helped make Love Your Heart happen, including county staff, Carrie Riccatelli, Dr. Wilma Wooten, Dr. Eric McDonald, Barbara Jimenez, and not to be forgotten, our other community partners, including San Ysidro Health, Be There San Diego, the San Diego Goals, CVS Aetna, U.S.-Mexico Border Health Commission, AMR, Afghan Community Culture Center, the San Diego Goals, Champions for Health, San Diego Blood Bank, License to Freedom, and the Islamic Center of San Diego East County. These are just a few of the many dedicated partners who we're proud to join in accepting this proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone involved in your work on this important issue. The third proclamation will be given by Supervisors Anderson and Desmond, honoring Homeowners Exemption Awareness Month. Accepting this proclamation will be Jordan Marks from the San Diego County Office of Assessor, Recorder, County Clerk. I will turn it over to Supervisors Anderson and Desmond.
I'll take it off here to start, Supervisor Desmond. Good morning, and it's my honor to recognize and celebrate February as Homeowners Exemption Month. Supervisor Anderson and I are proud to present this proclamation to the San Diego County Assessor's Office. And we are joined today by the Assessor Taxpayer Advocate, Jordan Marks, and his staff. San Diego County has the second most parcels of land in the state of California, with over 1 million pieces of real estate property, with an assessed value of about $627 billion, as identified by the County Assessor's Office. The California Constitution provides one of two possible tax savings opportunities for homeowners that claim their property as their principal place of residence with an exemption filing with the County Assessor's Office. A homeowner can file and be qualified for a homeowner's exemption on their principal place of residence and reduce their assessed value up to $7,000 or a $70 reduction on their annual bill. So just about anybody who owns a home can get that exemption. There's also other ones for disabled veterans. Disabled veterans who are qualified as disabled veterans, if they're rated 100% disabled by the Veterans Affairs Service, they can actually apply or have their assessed value reduced, so their bill would be a $1,500 reduction on their annual tax bill. So there's a better deal for veterans. So I'm grateful for all the work that our assessor's office and staff are doing to assist our homeowners, and I want to thank you for continuing to educate and advocate to all of the homeowners in San Diego County and saving money on their tax bill. So I'm now going to pass it over to my colleague, Supervisor Joel Anderson.
Thank you, Supervisor Desmond. You know, I had the good fortune of working with Ordnance Jordanberg's office, and he's done an incredible job for San Diego County. He created a taxpayer advocate in an advocate's office that's gone out and set all sorts of awards. In 2021, 12,000 disabled veterans were assisted to get their exemption to help them stay in their home. And I just want to thank Jordan Marks and his team and all those in the advocate's office for doing such a great job. I'm glad that we are constituent focused in San Diego County. Not all the other counties operate at this level, but you guys are all setting the bar, and I'm happy to recognize you in your efforts today. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Supervisors, Chair Fletcher, for having us, and especially Supervisor Anderson and Desmond for helping us highlight this property tax savings opportunity. If you're a homeowner in San Diego County, we want to help you. If you're a disabled veteran in San Diego County, we want to help you. And I'm really lucky to have with me a great team. I want to introduce Division Chief Ray Kim, Division Chief Robert Gomez. We have Supervisor Joey Del Rosario, a veteran from the Navy. And we have Ms. Regina Stewart, a 10-year service. She has just been doing an amazing job in the 20 years here at the San Diego County Assessor Recorder Clerk's Office. And through their hard work, we've delivered over $32 million in savings for homeowners, and we've delivered $17 million savings for our disabled veterans and their surviving spouses. So we appreciate your partnership, and reminding everybody, February 15th is the filing deadline. Please go to www.sdarcc.com. Customer service is our #1 priority. We're going to make it easy, and we look forward to saving you money and making sure you're not overtaxed. Thank you so much.
Great job, guys, gals.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate all of the work, and you and your entire team. And thank you, Supervisors Anderson and Desmond, for bringing this forward. Congratulations, everyone. Our final proclamation will be given by Supervisor Tara Lawson-Remer, honoring the North County NAACP, and accepting this proclamation will be Satya Austin. Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Thank you so much, Chair Fletcher. Good morning. It's my honor to recognize the North County NAACP for their work and service to our community. The NAACP was founded on February 12, 1909, to protect the political, educational, social, and economic equality of minority group citizens of the United States and to eliminate race prejudice. It was through Ms. Charleston Allen's fierce activism that the local North County NAACP was established in 1965, where she served as the first president. The NAACP work and activism continue to carry the civil rights torch forward as they are on the front lines of the fight for civil rights and social justice. It is their goal, and it is a goal that I share, to no longer allow the vicious cycle of racism to continue within our communities by fighting against the inequalities that continue to divide us. Their commitment to improving our entire region lives on through the membership of the North County NAACP. Throughout this pandemic, the North County NAACP has continued to support our students and schools, providing backpacks, school supplies, and scholarships to youth all over North County. Recently, they partnered up with the County of San Diego to help amplify the Emergency Rental Assistance Program and ensure tenants and landlords have critical information that they need to survive during the pandemic. Throughout Black History Month, we honor the North County NAACP and share their commitment to fighting longstanding ideas of prejudices that have too long silenced the voices of the underserved. We echo their words, hatred has no place where progress must be the objective. On behalf of the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, it is my honor to proclaim February 8th as North County NAACP Day throughout San Diego County. We are joined by Satya Austin, President of the North County NAACP, who has some remarks and is accepting this recognition.
Good morning, and thank you for that. On behalf of the North San Diego County members, I extend my sincere appreciation for this acknowledgement. I cannot say enough how the challenges we've experienced this past 2 years, but we appreciate the support in moving forward, and we will make sure that we make North San Diego County a better place to live.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Lawson-Remer, and thank you to the North County NAACP. We now have a special event this morning, a special occurrence. We're here to do the swearing in of our Chief Probation Officer, Tamika Nelson. Administering the oath will be presiding judge of Superior Court, Judge Michael T. Smith. San Diego County for many years has embarked on a reimagining of the probation services we provide to youth and adults. We've been opening new facilities to align with those goals, and I'm incredibly proud of the work that our probation department has done. Each and every member of the probation service is dedicated to keeping our community safe and really believing in and investing in the notion of rehabilitation, of restoration, of offering people a path to a better future. And when the role of our chief probation officer came open as a county board, we set out to literally search the entire country to look for the most qualified person, the person who could build and have the trust of the members of our probation department and the trust of the community with which they serve. And I want to say a special thank you to Vice Chair Vargas and Supervisor Lawson-Remer for really spearheading an incredibly robust search process. I want to thank the members of the community who weighed in and gave input and engagement. I want to thank my colleagues and county staff. And as a county, we are thrilled to welcome Tamika Nelson to San Diego County. Tamika Nelson comes to San Diego County with 20 years of experience in the field of probation. She earned her BA right here in San Diego at UCSD, her JD Law degree at the Humphrey School of Law in Stockton. She started as a probation officer in San Joaquin County in 2001 and worked her way up to Assistant Chief Probation Department with more than 350 sworn officers and civilian staff. As the Chief Probation Officer in San Joaquin County, she helped deploy evidence-based case management approaches to increase public safety and lower recidivism. She just shone brightly throughout the search selection process and was able to have the unanimous support of the Board of Supervisors in making this decision, but also have the support of those she had worked with in the past, both those she had supervised and those that had supervised her. She built tremendous support between the community leaders here in San Diego County, between our judicial partners who are an integral part of this process. Often unknown is that the judicial members in San Diego County have to ratify and agree with the decision, and we appreciate the role that the judges played, especially Judge Espana and Judge Oxney for their engagement throughout this process and the work that they did. And we are excited to welcome Tamika Nelson as our Chief Probation Officer of San Diego County, to welcome you to the County of San Diego family. And we know the same dedication that you brought to San Joaquin County will be brought here, and we are thrilled to have you. And so on behalf of the entire Board of Supervisors, Tamika, we welcome you, and we are here to support you as you go about implementing all of the things that have been lined up for probation here. And with that, I want to say a special thank you again for joining us to the presiding judge of the Superior Court, Judge Michael T. Smith, who is here to administer the oath. And with that, we welcome you both to come up.
Thank you, Supervisor Fletcher and the entire board. I first want to say what Supervisor Fletcher alluded to was how closely the Superior Court and the probation department and the probation chief work. We're hand in glove in our efforts to administer justice fairly for our youth in the community. And you're aware of the new youth transition center that opened the other day. It's had a ribbon cutting. It's an incredible step forward in our treatment and help and rehabilitation of youth. We do the same thing on the adult side. We look forward to working with you. We do work very, very closely. We're excited to have you on board. Ready this morning? Please raise your right hand. I'm going to try and break this down. Please repeat after me. I, Tamika Nelson, do solemnly swear.
I, Tamika Nelson, do solemnly swear.
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
And I will bear true faith and allegiance.
And I will bear true faith and allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of California.
To the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of California.
And I take this obligation freely.
And I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
I will well and faithfully discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher and the Board of Supervisors. I'm a little bit nervous. I've never done anything like this before, and try not to get a little emotional. I'm very honored to be in this position. I know I owe all of this to family. Without them, I would not be here. And not just my intermediate family who are hopefully watching. I hope they were able to access the YouTube channel, but also my family from San Joaquin and my family now here in San Diego. This county and the members of the probation department have been extremely, extremely welcoming. And I felt like I was home the minute I walked through the door. And my only wish is that I can also impart that feeling to the citizens and the community of San Diego, to the members of the probation department, certainly to the Board of Supervisors, the judges, everyone here. We all work hand in hand to make sure that our communities are safe, and we want our communities to be well as members of the community. So just thank you all.
Next on the agenda is non-agendized public communication. This is an opportunity for the public to weigh in for the Board of Supervisors on items that are within our jurisdiction but not on today's agenda. Reminder, according to Rule 4A, members of the public that are non-English speaking and need interpretation assistance will be afforded extra time to facilitate translation. According to the rules of procedure, we will hear from a maximum of 10 non-agendized public speakers at this point of the meeting, and we'll resume any remaining non-agendized speakers at the conclusion of the business before the board today. I'll ask the clerk to please call forward the first 10 non-agendized public speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 19 requests to speak on matters not listed on the agenda. For those that requested to speak, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. I'll remind the callers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We'll begin with our first caller. Again, please state your name before beginning your comments.
Consuelo. Governments have gone to great lengths to get people vaccinated. We were promised the vaccinations will be a game changer and it will restore our freedom. Turns out none of that was true. It does not render you immune. You can still contract the virus and you can still be infectious. The only thing this vaccine did for sure was to spill billions and billions of dollars in the pockets of pharmaceutical companies. Whenever a government places people's interests at heart, you need to think again. In the entire history of mankind, there has never been a political elite concerned about the well-being of regular people. What makes any of us think that it is different now? Never take anything any government tells you at face value. Always question everything any government does or does not do. Whenever a political elite pushes an agenda this hard and resorts to extortion and manipulation to get their way, you can almost always be sure your benefit is definitely not what they had at heart. As far as I'm concerned, I will not be vaccinated with anything that has not been properly vetted and tested and has shown no sound scientific evidence that the benefits outweigh the disease itself and possible long-term side effects, which, to this day, we don't know anything about. I will not be reduced to a mere guinea pig by getting vaccinated with an experimental drug. And I will most assuredly not get vaccinated because my government tells you and promises in return I will be granted freedom. Let's be clear about one thing. No one grants me freedom.
And then move on to the next caller.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Mark Wilcox. As a grandfather and father, I am sharing good news from San Francisco, where high school student use of cigarettes and e-cigarettes fell after San Francisco adopted a flavored tobacco ban, and it took effect. Consistent with national trends, e-cigarette use has been much higher than cigarette use, so it was important when the e-cigarette use dropped. And cigarette use also dropped following the ordinance. This good news demonstrates the power of public health policies that have at their center protecting youth. I thank our Board of Supervisors for adopting flavored tobacco ban. During these uncertain times, it is especially important to parents, grandparents, and caring adults that our county and our youth not seek smoking and vaping as a source of dealing with stress and anxiety. We respectfully suggest that reducing youth marijuana e-cigarette use should also be the county's goal, and it could be achieved through a flavored marijuana product ban. Deliveries from inside and outside the county have created a saturation of marijuana in our county, with flavored marijuana products being the #1 choice of young adults under the age of 25. With the advent of deliveries through phone calls, emails, and even texts, the choice of those under the age of 25, no one can claim that more marijuana stores are necessary. County staff should use its time to provide more resources available to young people under the age of 25, especially employment training and educational mentoring opportunities to assist the youth transition from high school to community colleges. Thank you for your help for our youth.
I'll hear from the next caller.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. I'm very concerned regarding the PowerPoint presentation that has been shown at 2 marijuana tax webinars last week.
I'm going to pause your time.
As a parent,
name for the audio record, please.
I'm sorry?
If you could state your name for the audio record.
Oh, so sorry. Yes, my name is Terry Ann Skelly. Okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. So I'm a parent of 3 adult sons and who has a wide circle of friends, which I entertain often. I object to the conclusion in the PowerPoint that the San Diego County needs more marijuana retailers, which seems to come from some murky assumptions. Now is the era of marijuana deliveries, online ordering by text, and never have I ever heard that access is a problem. I suspect that the assertion only came from marijuana lobbyists, profiteers, and their associated businesses, and not authentic data. I realize that the PowerPoint was only part of webinars to collect community input regarding the marijuana tax. However, it reinforces a false narrative that more marijuana businesses are needed, when the real question is what will be the cost to individuals, families, neighborhoods, and society in general. The costs are extremely high in mental health costs alone. I respectfully ask that comprehensive data analysis of costs of marijuana be conducted and that taxes be chosen to compensate for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is Becky Ratt. I'm a parent and public health educator. I come here this morning to share with you some information from ISIC, the International Academy on the Science and Impact of Cannabis. ISIC is an organization of international experts on cannabis who are guided by medicine and science to provide accurate and honest information. Today's webinar includes Dr. Shannon Murphy, who will be presenting on marijuana and the pediatric patient. She explains how the psychosocial screening is an essential part of the adolescent medical visit. Recent changes in marijuana laws around the county have impacted adolescent views on marijuana, and teens' perception of harm regarding marijuana use has decreased. Marijuana now surpasses tobacco use for many young people. It's crucial health experts and health departments understand the negative effects marijuana use can have on the adolescent and know what topics to address during a medical visit. I recently purchased cookies at a local cookie shop called Cookie Plug that my family visits frequently. I noticed they had smaller cookies of popular flavors for sale. I was shocked to learn they were CBD infused, being advertised as the therapeutic cookie in 12 flavors, baked fresh daily. Medical claims were also listed as possible benefits such as pain relief, inflammation relief, anxiety relief, depression relief, and more. This prime example of normalization of marijuana products not only decreases the perception of harm to adolescents, but also to young children. Elementary-age children who are curious of flavors when buying cookies at a local cookie shop. I urge you to listen to Dr. Shannon as our children are in trouble. Thank you.
Now go up to the next caller.
Mary D. here. I'm calling today to speak about Supervisor Vargas's prior comments from the meeting on January 25th, the morning session, item 17, about future staffing shortages for the Sheriff's Department. I wanted to respectfully point out her misrepresentation on one item, particularly her decrying that public comments about the vaccine mandate for new hires is apples to oranges and is irrelevant to the staffing situation. That was extremely disingenuous. Anytime an employer imposes any prerequisite certification, education requirement, or any condition of employment, it absolutely affects the available pool of applicants. To state otherwise is either doing so through an ostrich lens with head in sand, or else it is a deliberate attempt to try to reframe the narrative and gaslight the public. An applicant pool is absolutely affected, particularly in a tight job market where almost every agency is facing a shortage of staffing, and many agencies have publicly documented the dwindling number of applications they receive. You are indeed limiting the pool of candidates when you impose any type of prerequisite or mandate that many other agencies do not require. Public safety is a highly portable profession, and applicants and existing deputies are happy to take their skills elsewhere, leaving your agency and your constituents unsafe and vulnerable as we continue to see crime skyrocket throughout our county. Also, lastly, congratulations to our new probation department director who was just sworn in. Congratulations and welcome to San Diego. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Thank you.
Lana Cotton. A quote from Kanakoa. The whole world should have the option of buying hydrochloroquine, ivermectin, and a Z-Pack at the local corner store. But the psychopaths in power use the legacy media, big tech, and a captured medical system to shut down all cheap and effective treatments. Instead of using generic, repurposed antivirals, anti-inflammatories, anticoagulants, and antibiotics, the globalist regime closed down small businesses, shredded fundamental human rights, and created a fraudulent $100 billion mRNA vaccine industry. Their solution to an infectious disease was an authoritarian biomedical surveillance state built around a subscription service to a deadly and ineffective experimental gene therapy shot. Blocking early treatment, locking down the world, and mandating a deadly experimental mRNA shot are all crimes against humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hi, my name is Barbara Gordon, and I am glad that you honored February as American Heart month. It's a time when all people can focus on their cardiovascular health. I want to share with you a recent study published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal found that adults under 45 of age who consumed marijuana within the past 30 days had almost doubled the amount of heart attacks compared to those who did not use the drug. The study looked at 33,173 American adults who participated in the U.S. Behavioral Risk Factor Survey. According to the analysis, those who reported smoking marijuana more than 4 times per month had twice the odds of suffering a myocardial infarction. The research found a common misconception was that any level of marijuana use is safe. However, the marijuana being used today is a high potency. More and more research is emerging that demonstrates the serious health consequences that arise from using these high-potency marijuana products. Legalization is contributing to this public health crisis and will get much worse unless lawmakers like this board act quickly to rein in the newest addiction for this for-profit industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Audra. What's up, you guys? You got a full packed room in there. It's great because, I thought you guys had to shut it down because of COVID. But is it just specific to, the people that, dissent from your agenda? It's interesting. Anyway, so Tara, you're like pushing the whole civil rights torch forward, which is so funny because you guys are trying to usurp every one of our civil rights and act like we don't have them, but then you want to, placate that there's like these people that need to, protect their civil rights, all while you like leave a whole populace behind. It's pretty disgusting. And you guys actually dishonor Martin Luther King Jr. with every single thing that you're doing. And then you want to talk about Heart Health Month or whatnot. Love your heart. You guys know that these vaccines actually are causing heart failure, blood clots, like endless amounts of things, but like myocarditis and, pericarditis in children, it's a permanent thing. So, if you actually wanted to do something about heart problems, you wouldn't be creating them. But you guys don't think that you are creating them. You think that you're like saving the day. Like you're like, Superman and Clark Kent. No, you don't. You guys destroy everybody's lives and then act like you're going to offer up a solution to do something. And what's this, donate blood and you get a health screening? So, like, are you trying to, incentivize people to do things? Like, why can't they just go get a heart screening if they don't donate blood? I don't know. You guys always have a nefarious plan and agenda, and it's pretty disturbing that you let all those people in there, let them clap, let them do all the things that, you shame and keep us out of that building for doing. So we have to be out here outside trying to wake people up to be like,
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sandy Miskowski. I'm calling this morning to thank all of you as our Board of Supervisors representing San Diego County. I think you guys are doing wonderful work. I appreciate so much that you are making your decisions based on our whole community of San Diego County in regards to public health and safety, and you continue to use science-based, data-driven information to make your choices. I think you're all doing a wonderful job. And I don't get to vote for all of you. I only get to vote for one of you. And I want to say that Chairman Fletcher, you are my representative. And I feel so happy that I have voted for you in the past. And I would continue to vote for you as you and your board continues to make choices based on equity and equality throughout our county.
I simply cannot thank all of you enough. I know it's difficult to make choices of leadership when there's dissension amongst your constituents, and I appreciate all of you for your leadership. Thank you again.
Thank you. We'll now hear from our final caller this morning.
This is Luke Weingarten. Less than 0.1% of deaths from guns are from non-serialized ghost guns. It's less than 1 out of 1,000. You've ignored the obvious fact that criminals do not obey your laws, which makes your entire premise absurd. Criminals have already purchased as many 3D printers as possible and will obviously continue to print as many 3D guns as they can with programs they have already backed up until the day they die. So your agenda item will do absolutely nothing to stop violent gun deaths. It will, however, prevent law-abiding citizens who are afraid of you arresting them from being able to protect themselves inexpensively and easily. And since any criminal with average intelligence knows the police response time is 5 minutes at best, a family being well-armed is a huge deterrent to criminals and is a law-abiding citizen's only real defense. This is simple logic, and your narrative is indefensible. Since gun violence has increased much more in the poorer areas, since your draconian lockdowns have destroyed 40% of our businesses, this will disproportionately affect poor people's ability to protect themselves and their families the most. This is of little concern to you, supervisors, since your families are guarded by the very best guns that most people would never be able to legally own or afford. This place is my only chance to respectfully ask you a question, Chairman Fletcher. When our 10-round clip runs out. No answer will not be infringed. Never forget that.
Thank you. Chair Fletcher, that concludes the request for non-agenda public communication this morning. For the remaining callers that requested to speak on a matter not listed on the agenda, please hang up and call back at the conclusion of the session.
All right, thank you to all of our callers. Next on the agenda is approval of the statement of proceedings minutes for the regular meeting of January 25th, 2022. I'll make a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
A second.
All right, we have a motion by myself, second by Vice Chair Vargas. Ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We'll now proceed with the formation of our consent calendar. Members of the public will be able to comment on the consent calendar after the supervisors have had an opportunity to make any comments or any items that they wish moved from consent to discussion. We'll start with Supervisor Anderson. Are there any items that you wish to be pulled or comments that you wish to make?
Not at this time, thank you.
All right, Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
No, thank you.
Supervisor Desmond.
No items to pull. I do have a couple of comments. First of all, on item number 1, I want to thank, this is on the revised San Diego Board of Supervisors policy on the comprehensive homelessness policy. First of all, I want to thank staff for all the work that's been done to address homelessness in our county. And I appreciate addressing an upstream approach to provide preventative measures as well as measures for those who are already homeless. But if we can keep people from being homeless, that's great as well. Additionally, we have having access to 24-hour services is incredibly important, I think, for law enforcement, who may be the only resource right now that's currently available in the middle of the night. If we could have social workers available 24 hours. And I know it's tough to hire social workers right now, but having 24-hour services is, I think, a great thing. And then I guess on the county's Housing First policy, I'm still not a fan. I don't agree that Housing First should be the only tool in the toolbox. I do think we have many successful programs, particularly here in North County, that receive, unfortunately, no federal or state dollars or fundings that are not low barrier, but do actually amazing work and help people who are homeless, and particularly families who are homeless, without the Housing First policy. So while I don't agree with that piece, I see a lot of good policy at work, so I'll be voting in favor of it. Just want to express my I guess, reluctance on housing first only. But also then on item 4, it's the micro business COVID relief grant program. I do have a concern that the outreach organizations that were listed, the East County Economic Development Association, the Asian Business Association, the South County Economic Development Council, the Logan Heights Economic Development Corporations, all good organizations, but other than the Asian Business Association, there's no specific North County association or group. So I'd like to make sure that outreach is particularly performed in my district, in District 5 as well here in North County. So I see there's a lack of mention of different organizations in North County for that outreach. And all of our businesses have been hit hard and continue to face challenges, I guess, with staffing and supplies. And I support a program that will be providing more relief for small businesses throughout the county. So I'm really glad to have this, and I will be supportive. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with those comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Desmond. Vice Chair Vargas.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. I just have a couple of comments. Item 1, 4, and item number, I think, 5. And so first on item 1, I just want to thank the Department of Homeless Solutions and Equitable Communities for their excellent work developing the guiding document for countywide policy on homelessness. They've been working really closely with my team and the community, more importantly. I really appreciate that they the policies really recognize the truth that poverty and equitable economic opportunity are the root cause of homelessness. And I really appreciate that I'm glad to see that they're also putting the needs of our homeless LGBTQ plus community youth and youth of color at the forefront and focusing on how to offer culturally competent services and housing strategy for them. And so I want to make sure that I just want to say thank you to them and really appreciate all of the work that they're doing. And I know that there's new policy highlights that the legislative advocacy work that they're doing and redefining. I really want to look at how we redefine homelessness, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done as we're centering our senior population and the work that we're doing overall. And so I just want to say thank you for the great work, and I'm looking forward to regular updates and in how we're doing this work as well. And then on item number 4, I want to thank county staff. Last October, I was really proud to bring forward the proposal to carry out the in-depth proposal to across the enterprise so that we could around economic prosperity and innovation and development. And since then, the county staff has really taken actions to identify and pursue economic relief. And so I'm really glad that this program is taking place and that the grant funding opportunities are happening, right? And so as we've done with other funding, I think that it's critical that we focus our efforts on uplifting and supporting those that are most impacted by the pandemic. And so I just want to extend that allowable according to grant funding requirements. I would like to see the outreach efforts for the California Microbusiness COVID-19 Relief Grant program focuses within the communities throughout the region that have been identified as being within the lowest quartile of the Health Place Index. We have done that before, and so I just want to make sure that we don't forget what these funds were intended for, and so that they can ensure that those micro businesses located in the areas that were highly impacted by the pandemic are aware of these opportunities. And I know that the county staff has been really good about doing that, so I want to make sure that I just emphasize that during this discussion. And then last but not least, it has been my really pleasure to serve as a trustee on the SD Sarah board on item number 5 regarding the employee retirement. And for me, I think I'm very proud to have been working alongside other trustees on the board. And we've recommended the decrease in the county's average contribution rate and the decrease to our employees' contribution, which is proposed in this board action. This is really a healthy trajectory, and it speaks to SD Sarah's strong stewardship of our retirement trust fund on behalf of our employees. And so I welcome the full support of the board for the proposed contribution errors and proposed contribution rates. And with that, I'm happy to second the consent calendar.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair Vargas. I don't have any items to pull. I do want to add on to the comments my colleagues have made on agenda item 1 related to homelessness. We have a number of homeless-related items, not just on this agenda, but in just about every board meeting we have. We know how important it is to partner with the cities in their incorporated jurisdictions, with us primarily being there to provide mental health and drug treatment services, and then what we do in the unincorporated areas where we shoulder both responsibilities. And so I think this comprehensive effort and program aligns with all of the things we've been doing in the recent years to get our county more engaged and more helpful in getting more people off the streets. And so I want to commend all the work that's gone into that. On item 5, I also want to just echo the sentiment and appreciation as we continue to put COVID-19 and so much of the hardship of the recent years behind us. I think this is something we can do to continue to help some of the small businesses that have been impacted through everything that life has been throwing at folks the last few years. It's at times easy to lose sight of the reality that it was almost 8 months ago that any restrictions or limitations on businesses were lifted. It was last summer, last June, when that happened, but we know that there are lingering effects, and despite all the efforts to provide help and support, there's always more that we can do. And so the ability to have this small business COVID-19 grant program will help get about $3.8 million out to some of the smallest businesses, often family-run businesses in San Diego, to help them purchase equipment, invest in working capital, apply for and renew permits, pay off any debts accrued due to the pandemic, and offset costs resulting from the pandemic and other efforts. So again, we're continuing to try and take action to help as we come out of this, recognizing that even though all the restrictions on businesses were lifted 8 months ago, there continues to be some impacts, and we'll continue to do everything we can to support folks that are out there. I want to thank our outreach partners who will be out there ensuring that we get this help and assistance to it. And I also want to give my appreciation to the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development and the California Office of Small Business Advocate for their partnership and making these funds available and putting us in a position as a county to continue to help. With that, we have a motion by Supervisor Desmond, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas. Before we vote, let me ask the clerk to call forward the public speakers on items on consent today.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Excuse me. Also note that the consent calendar includes the items on the San Diego County Fire Protection District agenda. We have 6 requests to speak on matters listed on the consent calendar. For those members of the public that requested to speak on items on the consent calendar, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. You will have 2 minutes to address the board. I'll ask you to please begin by stating your name for the audio record. I'll remind the callers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We will begin with our first caller.
Audra. Hey, Nathan, are you still knocked out after your dive? Just curious. Anyway, so I love that you guys always put all these agenda items together so nobody can address it. Yeah, you're talking about business restrictions have been lifted, Nathan, yet they still face all these hardships and requirements just for people to go to work, be employed, and all of this stuff. So, I mean, I don't know what you're talking about. But it's kind of funny because you're talking about using COVID-19 funds for micro business funding, like $2,500 with the prices of gas and electric and all the SDG&E shenanigans that you guys are doing. Pretty sure that's going to go quite quickly. And, you know, are you really going to get it to them? Do they have requirements as far as getting that money? And you talk about homelessness. It's funny because you're saying every meeting we have an agenda for the homeless, but yet the problem still exists. You see that you guys don't actually fix problems. You know that you're creating a homeless issue with these vaccines because people are losing their jobs. Because if they do not inject themselves with a bioweapon, you're basically terminating them and leaving them to not even be able to care for their family. I mean, you never address the real issue. You want to act like, oh, we're helping the homeless, all while you're creating the homeless issues. What about the people that are out on the street? I mean, we go on marches, you know, every couple of weeks around this building, and there's actually more homeless on the street than there has been. So whatever you're doing isn't working. Are you reaching out to those people, or do you just expect them, being homeless and having no access to probably any kind of, phone or TV or anything, to see what you guys are offering? Are you going out to them and saying, hey, we would like to help you get a home? Or are you ignoring them? That's a problem. Like, nothing that you guys do ever goes anywhere. Every project that you start totally fails. So.
From the next caller.
Mark. Hi. About your filling of the vacancy of the San Diego County elected office of sheriff. The sheriff is supposed to be the one person in the county who can not permit the federal government to come into our territory. And instead, usually you appoint someone who is actually on their side. And in fact, I've actually seen sheriffs advertise for their campaign that they have federal experience, which people are naive enough to think is a good thing. That's exactly the opposite of what a sheriff should be. I'm sure you'll appoint the wrong person, and it's absolutely disgusting.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Paul Henkin, Agenda 4. Now that the Supreme Court has ruled against vax mandates, and that is the vax mandates for business over 100 workers, it is up to you to justify them. It is also your job to review legislation which might be outdated or ineffective. COVID is causing fatigue as a symptom in emergency workers, police, firemen, and lifeguards, hospital workers, paramedics, and a bunch of other people. It doesn't matter whether they're vaxxed or unvaxxed. If you get it, you get fatigue. The rest, the other people who are working with you, then get fatigue when they have to do their job and yours. Vax mandates further restrict availability of workers. We need to abolish them. Show some backbone and do this for your people. Don't keep the bad stuff in place just because someone says, like, Sacramento. Okay? And Andrew Potter, that's a nice spirit. Well,
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Good morning, County Board of Supervisors. This is John Brady, District 3, and the leader of Lived Experience Advisors. I really just wanted to reach out and say thank you for everything that you are doing to address our homelessness crisis. We are seeing more and more people on our streets, and this is a result of COVID and the lingering impacts. It is now time to act. I do want to mention that we are working with the Downtown Partnership to hopefully design and implement a safe village concept, first ever in the city of San Diego. I believe that the days of mass shelters are over with, and that in order for us to be successful with our homeless population, we need to explore more of these safe villages throughout the county and cities in this region. It seems to be happening in many other cities throughout the county right now. There's a lot of interest that is coming out of the work that we're doing. And again, let's see more of this. I think community-based solutions where actual communities get involved and become a part of the solution are incredibly valuable to our system. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from our next caller.
Hello, my name is Lilian Serrano, and I'm an Escondido resident and co-director with Universidad Popular. I'm here to express our strong support for the creation of the California Microbusiness COVID-19 Relief Grant Program. We know that microbusinesses allow for immigrants and low-income communities to provide for themselves and their families while positively contributing to our local economy. The COVID-19 pandemic affected many businesses, but given the vulnerability of this business, its impact was disastrous in our communities. As Universidad Popular, we're pleased to see that we're now including these microbusinesses as part of our recovery efforts. As the program is launched, we look forward to hearing from county staff about the efforts to ensure that non-English speakers, immigrants, and low-income communities, especially those in North County, how they are outreached to and assisted in the application process to ensure that those who are more vulnerable in our communities are able to take advantage of this program. As our Supervisor Desmond pointed out, of the organizations who were listed on the letter of the board, most of them do not have a presence in North County, and it was not clear to us how this was going to be rolled out in our side of the county. Thank you for all the work for the Board of Supervisors, and we look forward to working with you to ensure that all microbusiness are successful in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes the requests under the consent calendar this morning.
All right, thank you. We've got a motion by Supervisor Desmond, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas, to approve the items listed in the agenda as being on consent. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond? Supervisor Desmond? Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, yes.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors who are present voting aye.
All right, we're going to go to our discussion items. We have a couple doctors with us here today on the COVID-19 items. We're going to take that item first. We want to be respectful of their time and appreciate them taking the time to be with us. We'll turn it over to staff presentation. After the presentation, we'll hear from members of the public on this comment, and then we'll come back to board members. So with this, let me turn it over to staff for their COVID presentation.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Give us just 1 minute. They're all coming down to fill the seats. Thank you.
While we're waiting for staff to get situated, any members of the public that requested to speak on item 16, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. Today's presentation will feature our Public Health Officer, Dr. Wilma Wooten, who will provide a public health update. Additionally, Dr. Robert Schooley, Infectious Disease Specialist and Distinguished Professor of Medicine at the University of California, San Diego, will provide an overview of COVID-19 immunity, infection, vaccination, and immune markers. Now please welcome Dr. Wooten.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. During this past December and January, the county, like the rest of the United States, saw a substantial increase in COVID-19 cases due to the holidays and the Omicron variant. Currently, cases are declining, and it appears we have passed the surge peak, but transmission and cases remain high. Here, we can see the level of community transmission assigned by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which can be found on their COVID-19 data tracker website. As of Monday, February 7th, the United States map shows all states with high transmission or red. Looking closely at California, most counties, including San Diego, also have high transmission based on case rate and testing positivity. For any areas with red or substantial transmission, CDC recommends that everyone, including fully vaccinated individuals, wear a mask in public indoor settings to help prevent spread of COVID-19 and protect others. Additionally, the California Department of Public Health has mandated that everyone in California wear a mask in indoor public spaces and workplaces through February 15th. This slide shows the number of new cases reported by date of report since November 20th last year. During the last few weeks, cases started to decrease. For the last 8 days, from January 30th through February 6th, daily cases reported have ranged from 1,313 to 3,209. However, this most recent surge has included the highest number of cases ever reported to date in San Diego County during this pandemic at 19,009 cases. Based on wastewater surveillance and preliminary real-time testing surveillance, it is estimated that currently over 90 to 99% of cases in the last couple of weeks were due to the Omicron variant, with the remaining small number of cases due to the Delta variant. This slide shows the current number of cases and hospitalizations observed this winter compared to last winter in San Diego County for November 1st through the end of January for each winter. Cases and hospitalizations for last winter, 2020 through 21, are represented by the blue solid and dotted lines, respectively. This winter is represented by the red solid and dotted lines for cases and hospitalizations, respectively. The 7-day average number of reported cases for each winter is shown by the solid lines, and the 7-day average number of patients hospitalized in civilian hospitals, known as the hospital census, is shown by the dotted lines in each winter. Last winter, cases started increasing slowly from the beginning of November 2020, peaking early January 2021. In contrast, cases remained relatively low this past November 2021, with a small rise early December, followed by a sharp increase at the end of December 2021. For the last presentation to this board on January 11th, modeling predicted cases would peak within a week or two. Cases peaked a little earlier than expected, around January 13th. The pink shaded area on the graph shows the hospitalization projections that were shared with the board on January 11th. This shaded area is based on various projections developed by Dr. Natasha Martin, an expert on infectious diseases, modeling, and a professor at UCSD. The area is large due to the different assumptions that impact the model, including virus transmissibility, rate of vaccination, and the average length of hospital stay. Based on these scenarios, it was projected that the hospital census would meet or exceed the peak observed for winter 2021, and the peak may occur around the 3rd week of January. Examining the actual data, hospitalizations peaked during the last week of January 2021 and have begun to decrease. If this trend continues with the peak this winter, then the peak this winter was close to, but did not exceed the peak observed last winter. Now, looking more closely at the trends for hospitalization and ICU admissions, this figure shows the status of San Diego County's non-federal adult and pediatric hospital beds. In the most recent 30-day period from January 8th through February 6th, the number of COVID-19 confirmed hospitalizations increased by 2%, from 943 to 959 patients hospitalized with COVID-19 on February 6th. As mentioned previously, hospitalizations have begun decreasing in the past few weeks. Likewise, the number of ICU patients in the same period increased by only 4%, from 169 to 176. Both these measures have significantly decreased since the last update to your board. At the last presentation to your board on January 11th, there was a 204 increase in confirmed COVID-19 hospitalized patients over the previous 30-day period, and an 87% increase in COVID-19 confirmed ICU patient admissions. Now discussing vaccinations, this slide shows the continued collective progress made by our community partners all across the county, as well as county staff members to administer COVID-19 vaccines in our region during the past 14 months. As of Monday, February 6th, over 6.7 million vaccine doses have been administered in San Diego County. Almost 2.9 million, or 91.8%, of currently eligible residents 5 years and older have received at least one dose, and over 2.5 million, or 80.7%, have been fully vaccinated. The vaccination dashboard now includes additional information also about booster doses administered to San Diego County residents. Almost 1.1 million booster doses have been administered to county residents, which is 51.8% of individuals who are eligible to receive a booster dose. This slide shows the estimated 7-day rolling average daily case rate by vaccination status in San Diego County residents in the 3-month period from October 31st through January 29th. The case rate among those who are not fully vaccinated, shown by the top orange line, includes individuals who are partially vaccinated and those who are not eligible for the vaccine. The green line shows the rate for fully vaccinated residents, and the blue line shows the rate for fully vaccinated residents that also have received a booster dose. The last 14 days are shaded because illnesses from this time may not yet be reported and vaccination status may not yet be known. Therefore, these rates do not yet reflect the recent decreases we have begun to see. From this graph, we can see that in the 3-month period, the case rate among those residents not fully vaccinated is consistently higher than the rate among fully vaccinated residents and those with the booster. On the right side of the slide, looking at case rates for the week January 9th through January 15th, there was an average of 419.9 cases per day per 100,000 not fully vaccinated residents. This is compared to 253.4 cases per day per 100,000 fully vaccinated residents and 140.6 cases per day per 100,000 residents who have received a booster. Therefore, the case rate was about 3 times higher for not fully vaccinated residents compared to those that were fully vaccinated with a booster. Here is another look at the number of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths by vaccination status in the same 3-month period. Looking at the percentages from left to right, you can see the benefit of being fully vaccinated and the additional benefit of having a booster. About 10% of cases, 7% of hospitalizations, and 1.5% of deaths among individuals with illness onset between October 31st and January 15th occurred among individuals that were fully vaccinated and received a booster dose at least 14 days prior to their onset of illness. Over 72% of deaths occurred among those who were not fully vaccinated in that period. Finally, as always, we encourage everyone to be COVID safe. To protect yourselves and others, it is recommended that you take the precautions that are listed here, which include wearing a well-fitted mask, especially when indoors and around others who are not household members. We encourage San Diego County residents and everyone to limit indoor activities where possible, especially if vaccination status of others is unknown. If you have symptoms of COVID-19 or other respiratory infections, please stay home and follow current isolation guidelines until you are better. And don't go to an emergency department for COVID-19 testing. We have numerous community settings available for that purpose. To reduce the chance of getting infected or having severe outcomes, get all recommended doses of COVID-19 vaccine and a booster when you are eligible. And finally, it is important to also obtain the flu vaccine, which can be obtained through your local provider or pharmacy, and it is available at no cost through our County of San Diego immunization clinics. Now please welcome Dr. Robert Schooley. He is an infectious disease specialist at the University of California, San Diego, and will talk about COVID-19 immunity from infection and vaccines. Dr. Schooley.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wooten. Thanks very much to the supervisors for the opportunity to talk with everyone today. I'm going to try to cover three general topics. A basic discussion about the way the body responds to either vaccination or infection. I'll talk a bit about how these compare to each other and how they both reinforce each other. And then get to the final question about whether there's a test one can take, a blood test, that can tell us whether or not somebody needs to be vaccinated or is safe from becoming infected. Next. There are two layers of the immune response to COVID and other viruses and germs we confront. The first is called innate immunity, and this is kind of immunity walking off the street. It includes our skin, it includes the lining of our gastrointestinal tract, and most importantly, cells we call natural killer cells. These are lying in wait for any pathogen that comes our way, and they turn on cytokines like interferons that serve as the first line of defense. Adaptive immunity is what we talk about most when we talk about vaccines. These are antibodies and killer T-cell responses that respond to specific pathogens, and they are induced by infection or vaccines. Next. Now, innate immunity is important in coronaviruses because these viruses have learned how to turn innate immunity off. This is very important because it allows them to come into our lungs unopposed, to grow to very high levels, and to do this at a time when we have no symptoms, because many of the symptoms we have when we have the flu are because we feel the interferon we produce. So what the coronaviruses do, and in particular SARS-CoV-2, is to turn off this response, grow large amounts of virus in people who are unaware they're infected for the first several days, which is why the virus gets around and is transmitted by people before they are aware they're infected, and why masks have been so important in public at times of high transmission. Next. Now, we talk mainly about the adaptive immune response, and the adaptive immune response consists of antibodies, pictured here. These are Y-shaped molecules that have a site that looks specifically for structures to bind very tightly to. There are two of them, one on each end of the Y, and they are identical. In the case of antibodies to the COVID virus, they look for the spike protein that we hear so much about that compose the vaccines. When an antibody binds to this spike protein of the SARS coronavirus, that virus is hampered and can no longer get into cells and infect the cells. So these antibodies are said to neutralize the virus. They're very important in helping prevent infection, but they don't tell the whole story. Next. The other part of the immune response, which is triggered by both vaccines and by infection, is the cellular immune response, or the killer T-cell response. The killer T-cell response is one that looks for foreign materials on the surface of cells that have viruses or bacteria in them, or have cancer components in them. These foreign materials are ones that are made, in this case, by viruses. They leak out while the viruses are being made in this virus factory, this virus-infected cell. And when that little bit of virus gets to the surface of the cell, it can be recognized, next, by specifically trained killer T cells. And when that happens, the entire virus-producing cell is blown apart, and it prevents those viruses from being able to go and infect other cells. This is a very important component of our immune response, which helps us recover from infection and protects our lungs from infection, and isn't measured when we get an antibody test. Next. Now, after infection or vaccination, our immune system sees critical components of the virus, and it learns to recognize these critical components. They're very important in helping us recover from infection, and they're very important in helping us prevent future infections, and should a future infection occur, to have that infection be much milder than the first time around. And this is why both vaccines and previous infections reduce the level of infection in the community and severity of illness in the infected people. Next. To show this in a cartoon fashion in this timeline, if one starts out with no immunity and you have an infection or you get a vaccination, your body makes what we call a primary response. And you see a little blurb of immunity that begins to occur a week to 10 days out after the first infection. This begins to wane, though, about 10 days to 4 weeks after that infection is over, and gradually decays. If you go back and have another exposure to the virus, or you get vaccinated, you have a memory response, and this is much brisker, gets to a much higher level, comes much faster, and if this were an infection, the infection will be much milder, and the person would be less likely to transmit the virus to others because the virus would not grow to as high a level. This also decays over time, and what a booster shot does next is really triggers the immune response. It gets up to the highest level yet, stays there for a longer period of time, and then gradually again begins to drift down. Now, the closer you get to that original blue line I mentioned at the beginning, the more likely you are to have another infection or to get ill if you do become infected. And as you get closer and closer, your risk increases. We don't have a specific test that tells exactly where you are in this zone of increasing risk. We just know that as you get closer to the bottom, your risk goes up. If you get infected to a virus that's a bit different, like the Omicron variant, you don't have to get as close to that baseline of no immunity. If you get exposed to a large amount of virus, for example, in a closed room with a large number of infected people, you don't have to get down that low either. But it's just a general way of saying the farther we stay away from that zone of infectious risk, the less likely we are to be infected, and the more likely we are to recover quickly if we do become infected. Next. Now, there are two words that have been used for a long time that really are telling us the same thing. We've talked about breakthrough infections, and these we began to realize occurred in people who had previously been vaccinated. These are generally relatively mild, and they're mild because of the immune responses that I've been talking about today. Your body is ready to see the virus after vaccination, responds quickly, and gets the virus under much better control. After you've had your first two immunizations with mRNA vaccines, the risk of breakthrough infection begins to rise about 4 to 6 months later, and we see an increasing number of breakthrough infections as the immune response decays. Reinfection occurs in people who've already had a COVID infection, and it occurs for the same reason. The immune response decays over time, and 3 to 4 months after your first infection, you begin to be at risk for having yet another infection. In this case as well, the disease is more likely to be milder than if you'd not been infected or vaccinated before. But they both basically represent infection in the presence of some immune response, either from infection or from vaccination. Next. Now, to get to some real data, if you look at the upper left-hand panel and the black dots, this shows you the level of immunity that you get after 2 doses of an mRNA vaccine. In the black dots to the original strain of virus that we've been dealing with up until the Omicron variant came along. This original strain of the virus is what is used to make the vaccines that we're currently using. And you can see that 2 weeks out, everybody in this group has a level of immunity that is way above that dotted line below, which is the danger zone I was talking about before. If you look at using the same blood, the blood from the same people, their level of protection against the Omicron variant, you can see the level of protection is much lower. And this is because the Omicron variant is a little bit different, and the antibodies that bind very tightly to the original virus from which the vaccine was made don't bind as tightly to the Omicron spike. And if you go to the upper right-hand panel and wait 7 or 8 months, and go back and look at the same people, you can see the amount of immunity to the original strain has declined substantially, and to the Omicron variant has declined even further. In fact, most people don't have much protection at all 7 or 8 months after their original vaccination series. In the lower left-hand panel, you can see what happens after a booster dose Both levels of immunity, and particularly the Omicron specific immunity, rise substantially and get away from that danger zone. But again, over time, they gradually begin to decline 3 months later, but they're still much higher than they were after the first 2 vaccinations. So what we're basically showing here is that each time our body sees either the virus or the vaccine, our immune system gets a little bit brighter, a little bit smarter, and protects us a little bit better. But we're not fully protected after 2 doses of the vaccine anymore. This booster dose is necessary, particularly as the virus begins to change and we see more Omicron circulating in the community. Next. So is there a blood test we can use to tell us who's protected or not? The short answer is no, and that's because we can measure antibodies, but we are not, with regular laboratory tests, able to measure those killer T cells, which are also very important. And it also depends on which vaccine, which viral variant is circulating in the community in terms of the specific level of antibodies that might be protected. We can measure these antibodies in large groups of people in the population and know how immune the general population is and how safe we are for big surges coming about, but we can't tell an individual person with one antibody test whether or not they can or cannot become infected if they're exposed to the virus. Next. So finally, how do we look at this? We look at this in a way that tells us that our immune system is adaptive. It learns what it's seen before. And to kind of give it anthropomorphic characteristics, if it's seen it before, it wants to be ready for it again. That's what the memory response is about, and this is what vaccines do for us. They help our immune system anticipate what it's about to see. Being infected is not a substitute for receiving a vaccine, because it may prime the immune response, but you can still get reinfected over time, and the boosters are important to push the immunity up to levels that keep us away from that danger and reinfection zone. So I'll stop here and turn the podium back over to my colleagues.
Thank you, Dr. Shuley. In addition to receiving this update, we recommend the board take the following actions with respect to this item. Ratify all actions taken in response to the local health emergency and the local emergency. Ratify actions taken by the Director, Department of Purchasing and Contracting, in response to the local health emergency and local emergency, and in accordance with San Diego County Administrative Code 402. To amend contract number 559185 with Illumina Incorporated for MySec consumables and maintenance. To execute contract number 565965 for as-needed laboratory testing with Helix OPCO, and to amend contract to increase the contract amount. To amend contract number 565744 for specimen collection services with Mobile Express Clinics. In accordance with Board Policy A-87, amend contract number 564118 with Haggerty Consulting Incorporated for cost recovery related to COVID-19. And adopt a resolution entitled, Resolution Authorizing Continuance of Teleconference Public Meetings Pursuant to Government Code Section 54953. Subject to your questions, this concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you to the whole team. I want to say a special thank you to Dr. Schooley for joining us. I know, and there may be some questions for you, Dr. Schooley, after we get through public comment from board members, but I know Supervisor Desmond had asked for a presentation on the analysis of immunity, natural versus booster, and we appreciate that information and appreciate that. Before, as we get ready to call forward the public speakers, I want to say there's a lot of encouragingness. Our Omicron cases are down significantly. We made it through another surge without running out of healthcare capacity. The state has announced the indoor mask requirements will be lifted on February 15th, just a few days from now. And I want to highlight almost 92% of eligible San Diegans, almost 92% of folks age 5 and older have received a vaccine. And so a lot of really encouraging news as we continue to put the worst of this well behind us. Let's go to our public speakers, and then we will come back to the board for comments and discussion on this item. Let me ask the clerk first to call forward our public speakers.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 13 requests to speak on this item. Also note for the record that we received 3 e-comments, 1 in favor and 2 in opposition. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 16 by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. You will have 2 minutes to address the board. We'll ask you to please begin by stating your name for the audio record, and I'll remind the callers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We'll begin with our first caller.
Apparently not. Which is okay.
Holy crap, Audra. So there's so much. This is so loaded with just a bunch of just false information. I mean, you guys want to act like, oh, we're bringing in information so, you know, we can, I don't know, act like we're kind of like doing something, but you're talking about innate immunity and how the virus actually turns that off. Everything you're saying about our immune system is totally wrong. You're acting like we need to be injecting ourselves with a gene therapy bioweapon with the spike protein that you're so freaking worried about everybody having inside their body. You're injecting it into people and then saying that they should get antibodies on top of a vaccine, and also that you're not fully vaccinated. Wow, I can't even talk because this is so disturbing, the way that you guys tell people such lies. And I mean, you've gotten like 7.28 million doses. I mean, what happened to herd immunity? It's like you want to get away from herd immunity and natural immunity because the only way is to use these vaccines, and you're collecting specimens. There is no way to tell from an Omicron variant. And you guys won't let us in there because of this variant. So on the 15th, when the mask mandate is lifted, are you going to let the people back in, or are you still going to, you know, act like there's such a threat that you can't let the people in? But the fact that you're testing wastewater and continuing to use all of these programs to, you know, mass vaccinate the people. I mean, Joel and Jim, are you going to try and take us out of an emergency but still implement all of those things that go along with it so you can continue to get money? Because that's all that, or that is blood money. Our natural immune system that was given to us by God is actually way better than anything, and you guys are destroying that.
Thank you. Time is up. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Mike Barillo. So thank you for the biology lesson on immunology, but it really doesn't address the issue that I've raised for the past 7 to 8 months, which has to do with vaccine injury. The county just never addresses vaccine injury. They act like it doesn't exist. But the CDC's own website, VAERS, is reporting just unimaginable numbers of people that are being injured now. 23,000 deaths, 26,000 life-threatening events, 41,000 permanent disabilities, 125,000 hospitalized, 117,000 emergency room visits, 3,000 cases of sudden cardiac death, 1,800 cases of blindness. Why doesn't the HHS address, at least tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm fucking wrong? You just don't address it. So I just don't get it. Tell me I'm fucking wrong. 2,000 cases of ischemic stroke, 3,000 cases of thrombocytopenic purpura, 2,000 cases of renal system disorders, 1,800 cases of paralysis or catatonia, 29,000 cases of various neurogenic disorders, 9,000 cases of anaphylaxis or shock, 8,000 cases of convulsions or seizure, 160,000 cases of various gastrointestinal disorders, 5,000 cases of intracranial hemorrhage, 11,000 cases of pulmonary embolism, 6,000 cases of pneumonia or pulmonary edema, 7,000 cases of deep vein thrombosis or thrombophlebitis.
Thank you.
2,000 cases of tinnitus.
Now hear from the next caller.
Good morning, Chairman Fletcher and the board. My name is Sandy Miskowski. I want to thank you for this presentation and thank your presenters for giving us their time for creating this presentation to help educate all of us about what's going on with this pandemic and how vaccinations can assist in reducing the spread of the virus and the severity of the virus, and to reduce the impact it has on our first responders and our hospitals. I thank you for continuing to follow the expertise of scientists and medical experts in virology and infectious diseases regarding guidelines for addressing this pandemic. Thank you for making choices to keep all of us safe as we can be, and continue to adopt the recommendations of these experts. Thank you again.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Robert Welston, I have a presentation. Please load it. In our spheres, vaccinated get sick after boosters, and unvaccinated get a different care standard in hospitals. Unnecessary deaths occur from protocols that deny early treatment, administer remdesivir, which is banned during Ebola, and force ventilation. But the county spins misinformation, manipulating public health data in a deceptive way. Grouping unvaccinated and vaccinated in 1, 2, or 3 doses doesn't make sense. It's nonsensical that fully vaccinated persons stop being vaccinated for 2 weeks following booster. This hides vaccine injury and inflates unvaccinated figures while ignoring prior natural immunity. I call on HHSA to separate cases by prior infection and second by vaccine status, as in the second table. People do the right thing given the right data. Next slide. Science answers questions like why 2 zip codes with 99.9% vaccinated has the largest rate of COVID cases and deaths. Is this geographical, and does fear of infection motivate vaccination? Scatter plots are used to determine correlation. We see strong correlation in deaths versus cases by zip. Correlation is weak between vaccination and case rates, even weaker to deaths. However, high vaccination rates are associated with higher cases and death rates. Next slide. Red points show the massive jump in the last 2 weeks' cases within majority vaccinated subpopulations. Vaccination rates vary widely in purple zips with no reported deaths, and death rates vary widely within fully vaccinated orange zips. The table shows cases and deaths over 2-week period for 8 fully vaccinated zips. There were 20,000 new cases and nearly 40 deaths within these zips. This data shows that we are now chasing a pandemic of the vaccinated.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hi, my name is Amber Long. Good morning, Board of Tyrants. The fact that this is still going on, I'd say is laughable, but honestly, it's downright disrespectful. It's downright disrespectful to the people you're supposed to represent, especially after what Newsom just did. How long are you guys going to keep this charade up? The government's lies go on and on, dusk till dawn. On and on, the government's lies go on and on, so long as you believe them. The COVID agenda will never end, never end, never end. This COVID agenda will never end, so long as you comply. Newsom doesn't care for his rules, care for his rules, care for his rules. Newsom doesn't care for his rules, rules for thee, but not for me. The hypocrisy is embarrassing, embarrassing, embarrassing. The hypocrisy is embarrassing. They're not even trying to hide it. It's time to stand in liberty, you and me. Liberty. It's time to stand in liberty and take back California. It's time to stand for freedom now, freedom now, freedom now. It's time to stand for freedom now and bodily autonomy. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Mary D. here. A few things. First, the Board of Supervisors should end the vaccine mandate for new hires as you are greatly diminishing your applicant pool. I also call on you to follow the recommendation of Congressman Ted Lieu and recognize natural immunity. Also, for a board that touts equity as its driving imperative, this policy disproportionately affects two particular minority groups, both Black/African Americans, as well as Native American, Indian/Alaska Native, which are 50.7% and 48.8% vaccinated in the 18 to 64-year-old range, respectively, thus making them the most marginalized applicant pool of all. In both those veins, as Reverend Bejarano petitioned in the opening invocation, I too pray for wisdom, vision, and determination for you all to realize how your vaccine mandate for new hires decision is actually negatively impacting the diverse population you claim to want to help. Secondly, more and more data indicates that vitamin D deficiency is directly correlated to more severe outcomes in both COVID and respiratory infections in general. I again repeatedly call on Dr. Wooten to require vitamin D levels be required to be tested for all COVID cases that result in hospitalization. Lastly, on February 14th, 2020, almost 2 years ago, the Board of Supervisors enacted an emergency declaration, which Chair Fletcher said would last for 7 days, but could be extended to 30. We are now approaching the 2-year mark. Stop the Groundhog Day renewal of powers and reopen San Diego back fully now, including unrestricted access to in-person attendance at public meetings. When 7 days turns into over 700, an emergency no longer exists. Reopen San Diego now. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Kevin Stevenson.
Please proceed.
I would like to just point out it's a never-ending cycle. So medical experts like Dr. Wilma Wooten and others give us facts, and then Audra Morgan and her gang of idiots that we've just listened to spew their nonsense. And then I have to call in and point out, hey, these people do not represent the majority of San Diego County residents. These people are a fringe, loud minority, just like that stupid convoy in Canada. I just want to point out two things real quick. Thing number one, theirs is basically the urban dictionary of the medical community. Any rando, any dipstick off the street can write whatever, and it doesn't have to be verified. One person literally claimed back in the day that a flu vaccine turned him into the Incredible Hulk on VAERS. Did that happen? Of course not. That's preposterous. But I guarantee you right now, 30% of the country unironically believes that because we live in a deteriorating society. The other thing I'd like to point out is that we have vigilantism, militias growing in terms of extremism, and through a recall election in Shasta County, they just took the majority on their county board of supervisors. So we need to stop these militias, these lunatics at the root to prevent this corrosive, disgusting dismantling of our democracy from spreading, because it's getting really, really dangerous. I would love to brush off these people as just useful idiots for right-wing media, but honestly, they're a lot worse than that. These people are
Thank you.
dangerous.
We'll now hear from the next caller.
Dean, I wanted to say if I created a product and took it to the Board of Supervisors and then came out a few months, or then came out later and said this product has little or no efficacy, we're coming out with a new product in March, you guys would be wanting your money back. You wouldn't be sitting there promoting it and trying to get everybody to take it. And I also want to address the last caller, because we're not a useless band of idiots. We're not vigilantes. We're trying to talk to people. We're trying to do things the right way. Just because we don't agree with somebody, we're not calling them morons. We're not using emotionally loaded terms and insulting them. We're trying to present facts. We're trying to talk to the Board of Supervisors, get them to change their mind, do things the right way. And we're not sitting there insulting people, calling them names, saying bad things about them. Audra Morgan is somebody who stands for freedom, and she's trying to do stuff the right way. So rather than using emotionally loaded terms and insulting her, you should rather debate her, or you should talk to her and not just insult her. We need to stop all of this stuff around COVID. We're wasting a lot of money that we could be using to help the homeless, money that we could be using to help people who have been killing themselves because they've been depressed from COVID. We can't do this anymore. I don't want to continue to pay taxes to promote vaccines that are giving people cancer, to promote vaccines that are useless, and to continue to do this. We need to get rid of all of these restrictions. We need to hire people who don't really want to have them.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Lana Cotton. A month ago, I played a clip from an emergency room doctor who promoted quercetin, zinc, vitamin C, D3, and ivermectin as a protocol for COVID-19 patients. Later that week, a San Diego health official claimed that clip was misinformation. My response is the same as Dr. Malone's, inventor of the mRNA platform. He states that Uttar Pradesh, a densely populated, relatively poor state in India, has absolutely crushed the COVID-19 death curve. They use ivermectin early and preventatively. Their COVID home kits contain ivermectin and vitamins. Joe Biden said, you're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. Americans were assured that COVID vaccines gave 95% protection. Whoops, 70%. No, 50%. No protection, but they reduced the spread. Changed again to don't reduce the spread, but reduce severity. Revised to don't reduce severity, but reduce hospitalizations. Another change to don't reduce hospitalizations, but you aren't going to die. Vaccinated people are dying of COVID. All that changing information on vaccines was misinformation, really lies. I quote from Senator Ron Johnson, if you're going to adhere to what is normal practice, wouldn't it be smart to go to doctors who are actually treating the illnesses rather than rely on the Faucis of the world that are sitting in the ivory towers, the public health officials that don't actually treat patients? That is, in effect, what America has done. We've relied on doctors who don't practice medicine, while we have vilified and censored and ridiculed those doctors that have exposed themselves to the illness. Many of them got exposed. They contracted COVID. They treated themselves with using these cheap, generic, widely available drugs successfully. It has made no sense what we've done during this last 2 years. Many countries have recently dropped all COVID mandates. When is America going to do the same? Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Thank you. Governments went to great lengths to get people vaccinated. We were promised the vaccinations will be a game changer and it will restore our freedom. Turns out none of that was true. It does not render you immune. You can still contract the virus and you can still be infectious. The only thing this vaccine did for sure was to steal billions and billions of dollars in the pockets of pharmaceutical companies. Whenever a government claims to have the people's interest at heart, you need to think again. In the entire history of mankind, kind. There has never been a political elite sincerely concerned about the well-being of regular people. What makes any of us think that it is different now? Never take anything any government tells you at face value. Always question everything any government does or does not do. Whenever a political elite pushes an agenda this hard and resorts to extortion and manipulation to get their way, you can almost always be sure your benefit is definitely not what they have at heart. As far as I'm concerned, I will not be vaccinated with anything that has not been properly vetted and tested and has shown no sound and scientific evidence to outweigh the disease itself and possible long-term side effects, which, to this day, we don't know anything about. I will not be reduced to a mere guinea pig by getting vaccinated with an experimental drug. And I will most assuredly not get vaccinated because my government tells me to and promises in return I will be granted freedom. Let's be clear about one thing. No one grants me freedom, for I am a free person.
That was from a member of the European Parliament. Wake up, people.
No one grants me freedom, for I am a free person. That was from a member of the European Parliament. Wake up, people.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Charles Dio. Hello, my name is Charles Dio. I'm calling today to humbly request that the Board of Supervisors and the local state of emergency. With each passing day, it is becoming more and more obvious that the Omicron variant is not worthy of the economically destructive response that it is receiving. The narrative is growing more flimsy with each day, and people are becoming too tired to believe the never-ending torrent of lies. So please end this so-called emergency and let the people live their lives. And while I have the mic, I'll also say that I truly respect and admire the convoy of protesters in Canada. The people of the world are watching, and we are with you. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Barbie Diego.
Go ahead.
Good morning. I am a healthcare whistleblower here again. Dr. Wooten, thanks for the misinformation panel that you called on me last month. I looked up all the doctors' MPI numbers, and they were all paid by Pfizer and conflict of interest with UCSD. Listen up here, my fellow doctors and healthcare professionals. Don't think for 1 second that any of these board of supervisors or CEOs in your facilities you work for care about you. You are nothing but a pawn, and they are manipulating and using your license to carry out these evil agendas. Evil agendas on killing the community people. And us people can sue the shit out of each one of you. You have an oath and a license to maintain, and each one of you who carry out these orders by Dr. Wooten are murderers. Title 18, Section 242. You will seek the death penalty. Listen up, parents. The state of California and Dr. Wooten has reached out to all pediatricians, telling them to do unethical things to the children, such as mixing these COVID vaccines with childhood vaccines. I'm telling you right now, keep your children out of the hospitals and away from these pediatricians. They are also getting huge bonuses. In regards to the masks and businesses, per OSHA law, all masks must be fit tested by a physician with a physical on site of the businesses. Let's see what else. Per Dr. Wooten's orders, we cannot report anything about the vaccinated patients, but guess what? Under my First Amendment rights, I am and forever will speak the truth about these vaccines causing severe injuries, including...
Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the callers. Look, we're all very aware of how difficult the last few years have been. 2 years ago, we encountered a global pandemic for which there was no vaccine and there was no therapeutic treatment. And that required a series of very difficult decisions, not just here in San Diego or in California, but across the country. And all of those were always designed to be temporary while we awaited a vaccine and while we awaited therapeutic treatments. We got a vaccine. It came. It has been incredibly effective. And that is what allowed us last year, as we saw record numbers of San Diegans, one of the fastest jurisdictions in the country, to see adoption of the vaccine, that put us in a position to begin phasing out all of those restrictions, with us as a county lifting them all in June of last year. Again, eight months ago, the restrictions on businesses and entities were all lifted. Now, at that time, the vaccine was not available for school-age kids, and we knew we had to get our kids back in school. And we had to get them back in school as quickly as we possibly could to make sure that they had the learning opportunities, the socialization opportunities, and everything that comes, the ability of parents to be able to go to work and do all of the types of things they did. And so the state of California put in place a mask requirement on K through 12 students because they weren't eligible to get the vaccine. They could not be afforded the same protections that adults could because it had not been approved for them. And you know, while certainly an inconvenience, the overriding goal was to get our kids back in school. A recent analysis showed that even though California school-age kids represent 12% of the K through 12 students in this country, 12%, we only represented 1% of the school closures due to COVID, which tells us that the overriding concern of getting our kids in the classroom was met and was worked. We're now in a position, though, as we continue to work our way out and put more and more of this behind us, that because school-age children are now eligible for the vaccine, and we've seen such incredible uptick, again, almost 92% of San Diegans 5 and older have received a vaccination, that I think we need to continue to plan for the next phases and steps. Everything we've done related to COVID has always been designed to be temporary, to help get us through the difficulty we face, to do it as responsibly as we can, to do it as safely as we can. And so I want to add a recommendation to today's COVID update, recommendation number 8, because I think we're now at that point where, because of the availability of vaccine for students, because of the decline in cases and spread we're seeing from Omicron, because of the overall conditions we're in, that we need to start figuring out what is the plan, just as we had lifted other restrictions 8 months ago, for how do we get in a place to safely and responsibly do that for our K through 12 schools as well. And again, this is a direction from the state, but I'd like to add a recommendation number 8 to direct county staff to engage with the state of California and with the California Department of Public Health to develop a safe and responsible path to phase out the mask requirements for K through 12 students. And I think this is an appropriate time to begin to work on this and come up and plan. We've seen a number of states around the country taking similar actions. And I think, again, because the vaccine is now available to everyone 5 and older, that covers all the students in K through 12 schools. And I think we ought to figure out how we can safely and responsibly partner and work with the state and the California Department of Public Health to get in place a plan to responsibly and safely phase out this requirement. Again, a part of our ongoing response and recovery. And I just want to thank again all the San Diegans. At times you would think that the notion of vaccines were controversial until you look at the fact that 92% of all San Diegans age 5 and older have received a vaccination. And so we've always been guided by being responsible, by doing what we believe is best. So I'll make a motion to adopt the 7 recommendations outlined, with the 8th recommendation that I have just outlined, and we'll put that motion on the table.
Happy to second the motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Let me go to my colleagues, see if they, Supervisor Anderson.
I think that we need to get back to meeting in person. If you wouldn't mind carving out the vote, I agree with everything. I like your suggestion on item 8, and I want to vote for this. Is there a way that we could just go ahead and split those out as 2 separate votes?
Okay, we'll let's hear from everyone, and then we'll see where we are. Sure. Supervisor Desmond.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I got a couple of questions and then some comments. I guess the first question, and it seems like we're going down this path, but I just wanted to ask Dr. Wooten that, you know, if on February 15th, if the state does reduce the mask restrictions, as they say they're going to do, are we, knowing what we know today, are we most likely going to be following the same state guidelines or putting in different ones? I'm just curious, just knowing what we know today, would we do the same as what the state is recommending for the reduction in use of the masks?
Thank you for that question, Supervisor Desmond. As has been approved by the board in the past that we will follow state recommendations, we do indeed plan to follow state recommendations after the mandatory indoor masking is lifted on the 15th of February. So we would resume actions that were occurring prior to when that mandate was put in place.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And then I do want to thank Dr. Shuley, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Doctor, thank you very much for the presentation. I like your bedside manner, and I like the fact that you use cartoons so I could understand. I'm not a medical person, so I appreciate those, your comments and your explanation today. The one thing that and I agree with everything that you said. I'm looking at your slide 20 where you said, or the question on the slide says, can we measure antibodies or T-cell responses to tell people if they are immune or safe? And your answer was no. And, and I agree with that. I thank you for that. And you do mention that the higher levels of antibodies or T-cells are associated with reduced risk or infections of illnesses, of the higher levels of antibodies, but you're not immune or safe. Well, I guess I would like to point out that's the same with vaccines. With vaccines, you're not immune or safe either, and you can still, just like with the antibodies, you can still spread the disease, and you can still become infected with both the antibodies and the vaccines. Yet a vaccine card will get you into places where an antibody card won't, even though higher levels of antibodies and T cells are associated with reduced risk of infections and illnesses, and the same with vaccines. So what also I want to point out, and to one of your colleagues, hopefully you're an agreeable colleague with you, Dr. Shuley, Dr. McCary, he's also a professor of medicine like yourself. He's at the Johns Hopkins School. And he had pointed out last month that the CDC actually released data from New York and California that demonstrated that natural immunity was actually 2.8 times as effective in preventing hospitalization, not saying you're safe or secure, but effective in preventing hospitalizations and from preventing getting the infection compared with the vaccination. But they also went on to say, and I'm not trying to make say people shouldn't be vaccinated, but they say that the natural immunity and vaccinations are kind of like the best whammy or the best thing you can do to try to to prevent getting the disease. So what I'm really trying to get at here, and this is not really a question for the doctor at all, but I do appreciate his comments, is that I'm not trying to say instead of the vaccine we provide antibody testing or for people, but in concurrence, I think with vaccines, the antibody test can tell if you have a reduced risk of illness or infection. And what I'm particularly going after is in the hiring and firing of jobs, because people are being fired if they don't have an vaccination, and particularly first responders, as we noticed. People are being fired if they don't have the vaccine or aren't vaccinated. And they also are prevented from getting jobs here at the county if they don't have a vaccination. And it looks like the higher, if they have the antibodies, it's similar. They can still pass it, they can still get it, but they got a reduced risk of illness. So what I'd like to do is ask our COVID task force, I think our chair and vice chair, that the next time they get together, they consider the fact that instead of requiring new hires, particularly people, maybe you narrow it down to first responders, or people that we were having trouble hiring. We're having trouble hiring social workers. Hey, we're having trouble hiring psychiatric people that can go out and help with the homeless. Right now we're requiring a vaccination card where an antibody, proof of antibodies has the same effect or similar effect, showing that they have a reduced risk, but they're not immune from the virus, just like the vaccines are. So anyway, I'd like to have our task force take a look at their next meeting to see if we can, for the people that are being hired by the county, if they can show, if they're willing, if they can't be vaccinated, maybe for religious reasons or health reasons, if they can show proof of antibodies, that they could be hired. And then like the other folks who aren't vaccinated at the county, they could be tested weekly. So I just would like that consideration moving forward. I'd really like to remove that whole vaccination requirement from hiring entirely. But if we can't do that, I'd like to at least have the option of the antibodies, show proof of antibodies, and still be able to get hired at the county.
Supervisor, I'm happy to have the subcommittee explore that, meet with some folks and take a look at that. We can't prejudge what the outcome would be, but it's certainly worth a discussion for us.
Thank you. And then also, I appreciate your item 8 of removing the mask for kids. I think that's long overdue. I also I'm kind of a fan of the hybrid meetings, and I know Supervisor Anderson had mentioned that you would like to get meetings together again, which is fine. But I think the emergency is over, so I'm not going to be voting in favor of the emergency. But I do appreciate your item 8 here, and also item 6 in the recommendations. So I may vote for the item with those 2 exceptions, but I appreciate your item 8 and the consideration of looking at the antibodies. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks again, Doctor.
All right. So we have a motion by myself, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas. Not seeing any additional requests to speak. The first vote we will take will be on recommendations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8. This will be, again, 1 through 6, along with number 8. So all of the items except number 7. And so with that, we have a motion and a second. Let me ask the clerk to please call the roll on those items.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye, except for the declaring the emergency. I'm no longer in favor of having the emergency in effect, but aye for the rest of them. And thank you.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We now have a motion by myself, seconded by Vice Chair Vargas, to adopt recommendation 7, giving us the option for teleconference or hybrid meetings in the future. And with that, ask the clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson?
No.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer? Supervisor Lawson-Remer?
Sorry, my connection cut out. I couldn't hear what the vote was.
This is for recommendation 7.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond?
Aye, except I am against the declaring the emergency, but I'm in favor of the teleconference meeting. Saves me gas and greenhouse gases. Thanks.
Vice Chair Vargas?
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher?
Fletcher, aye.
The motion passes with Supervisor Desmond voting no, all other supervisors being present and voting aye.
Thank you. We're now going to move to regular order on the agenda. We'll begin with item 10, filling the vacancy of the San Diego County elected office of sheriff. We're going to get a presentation here from staff. Item 10 is the appointment process that as a board we will consider today, setting up to fill the role of sheriff in the interim until such time as the voters of San Diego County elect a new sheriff and that sheriff is sworn in. Because Sheriff Bill Gore has resigned from the position, we have the authority, we have the obligation actually to appoint an interim sheriff or replacement until the election of the next sheriff is complete. The next sheriff will be elected in November of this year, and that term will start in January of 2023. The department is facing a lot of challenges in particular challenges surrounding the situation in our jails and efforts around increasing crime throughout San Diego County. And so I think it's critical that there is an interim sheriff in place to ensure that the department continues to meet all of the needs that the public and this board rightfully expect they will do. Today, what we'll be doing, and we're going to get a full presentation with slides included, but essentially what is up for consideration for us is an application period that would open tomorrow, Wednesday, February 9th, and would be open until Friday, March 4th, at which point the application period would close. The board, it is proposed, would then conduct a public hearing on March 15th, where the individual applicants will have an opportunity to speak. The public will have an opportunity to comment. The board members, Board of Supervisor members, will have the opportunity to ask applicants questions if they want to. And then what is proposed is we would select 5 finalists out of everyone who applies to move forward to the next board meeting. And then on March 22nd, the board would convene another public hearing to hear from the finalists that we selected on the 15th. Again, have the opportunity to ask questions. The public would have the opportunity to comment. And then at that meeting, the board would vote and select to appoint one of the finalists to complete the remainder of the existing term. Now, supervisors can vote for any qualified candidate who applies that they wish. I have stated for myself and myself only, I believe that the interim sheriff should be an individual who is not running to be a candidate for sheriff. I think it's, we ought to let the public weigh in and make that decision and find someone who won't be consumed by the nature of campaigning and politics. We can simply go about every single day doing the job that they're doing. We know in the past, the board has taken a very different approach, and it'll certainly be up to the prerogative of the majority of the board. But by having our final decision made on March 22nd, at that point, we will know whether the candidates we're considering are or are not a candidate for sheriff, as the filing deadline will have closed at that point. So let me turn it over to our clerk, who's going to give us a presentation on these things, and then we'll hear from any public speakers, and then we'll come back to the board.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher, members of the board. The item before you today is consideration of the process to fill the sheriff vacancy. If we'll go to slide 2, the San Diego County Charter provides the authority for the Board of Supervisors to fill by appointment the vacancy of the elected sheriff. The individual appointed would hold office until the election of a successor. Board Policy A105, entitled Process to Fill Vacancies of Elected Officials Other than Board of Supervisors, details that process. Presented here today will be a process to fill the vacancy that is consistent with the board policy and the charter. The board will conduct up to 2 public hearings and will appoint an individual to complete the current term of office, which ends in January 2023. This slide shows the proposed timeline for the process. If approved, the application period would begin tomorrow, February 9th. Applications must be submitted by Friday, March 4th at 5 p.m. On March 15th, 2022, the board will interview all qualified applicants. And pursuant to the board policy, applicants will be given 3 minutes to make a presentation. After that, the board will have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicants. The public will also have an opportunity to speak at that meeting. At that time, the board will select up to 5 finalists. At a special meeting on Tuesday, March 22nd, the board will interview the 5 finalists and select an appointee. The finalists will be given 3 minutes to make a presentation, and then the board will have an opportunity to ask each applicant questions. Again, the public will have an opportunity to speak. The selected applicant will immediately begin the background process, and it is anticipated that the appointee will be sworn in on April 5th. There are several requirements to apply for the sheriff position. Applicants must be a registered voter and a citizen of the United States. They must meet state law requirements to be a sheriff, such as having experience in law enforcement. Applicants must not have been convicted of any crime that would disqualify the applicant from holding elected office. And the selected applicant must be able to assume the position within 20 business days following the selection of the board. The applications will be available online. The proposed application, which is included with Attachment A to the board letter, meets the requirements of the board policy, requiring applicants to list their residence for the past 5 years, a written statement outlining their qualifications, and a statement asking why they wish to be appointed. Applicants must also submit a resume and a statement of economic interest, or a Form 700. Applications must be submitted in person to my office by Friday, March 4th at 5 p.m. Included in Attachment B is a communications plan to advertise the position. This is a summary of the outreach that includes print publications, physical postings, and social media. Of note, we plan to provide simultaneous translation services at the March 15th and March 22nd scheduled public hearings for the selection process. Staff is recommending the board take the following actions: determine the process will be conducted in accordance with the Charter and Board Policy A105, approve the application packet for the position, which is included as Attachment A, and set the application period and waive a provision in Board Policy A105 that requires applicants to personally appear to obtain the application form. We are still recommending that applicants submit their applications in person to ensure that applications are fully completed. Additionally, staff is recommending that the board indicate that finalists may be subject to providing written responses, allowing the county to conduct a credit and criminal background check and medical exam, and set the first hearing on March 15th for all applicants, and set a special meeting on March 22nd at 9 a.m. for the second hearing to consider the finalists. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Let's hear, I think we have a public speaker on this item.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. Yes, we have 3 requests to speak on this item. Also note for the record that we received 1 e-comment in favor of this item. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 10, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. When it is your turn to speak, you'll be unmuted and you'll hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. You'll have 2 minutes to address the board. We'll ask you to please begin by stating your name for the audio record. I'll remind the callers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. And looking for the callers in the queue at the moment. And we'll go ahead and begin with the first caller.
Audra. So here we go with the sheriff again. It's kind of, you know, we know what's going to happen. You're going to put in whoever you want that you know is going to push your agenda, when in fact you should be making the best decision for the county and the people of the county and their ability to protect the people instead of, you know, forcing them to push your agenda. I don't know if you heard about in Sonoma County that the sheriff is looking into criminal charges. They're doing an investigation on all of the things going on with COVID. In fact, it's happening in the UK too, and that is what the job of the sheriff would be, is to make sure that nothing dangerous is going on in the county. They're the backstop to making this genocide stop. And we know that you will put in whoever you want, Nathan, that it's not going to be that you're going to even listen to anybody make any public comments. You're just going to do what you wish, even though you're going to pretend, oh, let's have the people have their say. But you already know who you're going to pick. You don't want it to be anybody who's going to be running for sheriff. And that's a little bit weird. But also, these qualifications that you are claiming are for the sheriff, who makes those qualifications? You guys? You know, it's just, yeah, it's just pretty sad that we already know what you guys are going to be doing, that you're never going to make a decision that's in the best interest of the people, because if you really picked the right sheriff, the sheriff would put an end to all of these shenanigans, all of the death going on. They would arrest the people that are doing this to the people and not let it continue. But yet here we are in a place where the sheriff is actually helping implement all of these tyrannical, you know, agendas that you guys have in place for us, instead of doing what's right and, you know, protecting the people, upholding their oath. You're actually asking them to abrogate that, which they are, and even you guys are, and you shouldn't have the...
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Hello, my name is Crystal Irving, and I am president of SEIU Local 221, where I'm honored to represent more than 14,000 public employees. This is a new and more open board, and we support appointing someone who is not a candidate for sheriff. We have a new sheriff, and they will have a huge responsibility. The state audit highlights that the former sheriff's response to the crisis in the county jails has been too little, too late, with flawed policies. mandatory overtime that has caused staff who are already overworked by challenges, including the COVID-19 pandemic, to be critically exhausted in these life and death situations. In addition, department guidelines are often unclear about the decision-making role between sworn law enforcement staff and medical caregivers, leading to critical errors and even death. We urge the board, current leadership, and the new sheriff to take this audit very seriously, and we stand ready to be a partner in its implementation. Finally, I will add that we are supportive of the implementation of the Alternatives to Incarceration report as another tool to reduce unnecessary imprisonment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Luke Weingarten. The only thing that I think that is really imperative, and I think that all the citizens of San Diego can get behind, is that we need whoever you guys decide to appoint to be someone who is willing to make a public statement that they will stand for their oath, stand behind their oath, and under all circumstances, protect and defend the Bill of Rights given by God, or rights given to us by God, and the Constitution of the United States of America, with no exceptions, including you members of the board who are trying so hard to reduce and eliminate our freedoms. That's all I got.
Thank you. Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
All right, thank you. Let me go to my colleagues, see if we have any comments or thoughts on this. I'm happy to make a motion to approve the recommendations. Let me ask if there's a second or any comments, suggestions folks have.
I'll second it.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Not seeing any requests to speak. At this point, let me ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
We're going to go to agenda item number 11, preliminary report and recommendations on data-driven approach to public safety. Let me turn it over to staff for a presentation. We'll also go first on board comments to Supervisor Lawson-Remer, who initiated this action. But why don't we get the presentation, hear from any speakers, and then we'll come back to Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Good morning, Chair Fletcher and members of the board. On October 19th, 2021, your board directed the Chief Administrative Officer to produce a preliminary report with analysis and recommendations to safely reduce jail populations, including investments that can be adopted and implemented in the 2022-23 budget. The COVID-19 pandemic had drastic impacts on the criminal justice system at the local, state, and federal levels. For the past 2 years, we've seen a comparatively low census in our jails, coupled with historically high and unprecedented delays and backlogs in our court system that persist today. Your board provided direction for the CAO to examine what can be learned from the changes in policy and practice enacted during the pandemic, which led to the significant decline in average daily population in our jails. Our direction was to also examine what alternatives to incarceration can be expanded or enhanced to provide programs and services in the community in lieu of jail time for low-level, nonviolent offenses. Today, we will discuss the beginning of a broad and collaborative process to examine the data and to develop options of supporting alternatives to incarceration. The San Diego County Sheriff has the authority and responsibility to operate the jails in the County of San Diego. Today, the Sheriff operates 7 facilities, including 3 booking facilities where individuals charged with crimes are brought into custody by nearly 24 different law enforcement agencies. In response to the pandemic, the Sheriff made changes to booking acceptance criteria and continues to use population management tools and administrative releases to reduce the number of people in custody. This is critical to manage the health risks of COVID-19 to both individuals incarcerated and jail staff. Importantly, the jail population is a product of the actions of many criminal justice system agencies, including law enforcement, the district attorney, the city attorney, the public defender's office, probation, and the Superior Court. The decisions and discretion of all the criminal justice system partners at the time of arrest, prosecution, and sentencing all impact the average daily jail population, as do overall trends in crime. Another contributing factor impacting our jail population are individuals sentenced to California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation or to Department of State hospitals. COVID severely impacted transfers to both state prison and state hospitals and kept hundreds of people in the sheriff's jails who were sentenced elsewhere. This issue persists today with 418 individuals awaiting transfer to state prison and another 90 awaiting transfer to a state hospital. Of note, only about 25% of the people in jail today were arrested by a sheriff's deputy. The justice partners in our region each have a role and autonomous discretion related to arrest, prosecution, and sentencing of offenders, which is independent of the sheriff. For this reason, any efforts related to enhancing alternatives to incarceration will only be effective with the participation, support, and buy-in of the entire criminal justice system. With the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, many policy changes were enacted at the state and local levels to minimize jail populations and to allow for an appropriate public health response within the facilities. Mitigation actions intended to keep jail populations low included a 10% accelerated release credit, emergency booking acceptance criteria, zero bail modification, 30 and 60-day accelerated release orders, releases per court order, and additional stipulated releases. The justice agencies reviewed the impact of each of these actions as shown here. These changes resulted in 38% fewer individuals being brought into custody and had an effect on the characteristics of persons in custody. Unfortunately, of those released from custody or cited and released at the time of contact with law enforcement, many returned to county jail. As of January 25th, 2022, of the 8,006 people released from custody due to COVID-19 mitigation efforts, more than half have returned to custody. And this is higher than an estimated 36% who the Sheriff's Department sees returning to custody on a 3-year average before the pandemic. Of those who returned to custody, nearly 30% involved a new felony field arrest, and almost 70% of all returns to custody had some sort of felony involvement if additional warrants, court actions, or violations of probation or parole supervision terms are included. This level of recidivism is something that we would like to change. Any program or service which creates an alternative to incarceration must be closely monitored for effectiveness in reducing criminal behavior. The average daily population of individuals incarcerated in 2017, 5 years ago, was 5,687. The average daily population in the sheriff's jails for 2021 was 3,927, and during the pandemic, the total jail population dropped as low as 3,500 individuals. The majority of those in custody today are unsentenced on felony charges, making up about 70% of the average daily population in 2021. Many individuals charged with misdemeanor offenses spend less than 24 hours in jail and therefore do not significantly impact the average daily population in county jails. Due to court delays and other changes during the pandemic, the percentage of unsentenced individuals in jail has gone up over 16% from prior years. Additionally, many of those currently in jail are individuals who are higher risk and in custody for serious or violent crimes, with the most common primary booking charges for those individuals being murder, burglary, robbery, which makes them ineligible for release. This includes both sentenced and unsentenced individuals. By changing the booking acceptance criteria, the sheriff limited the types of crimes that can be booked into jail to primarily those that are violent, or pose an unacceptable risk to public safety. The misdemeanor population had long been a small fraction of the daily population pre-pandemic, but still it fell by 75% compared to 2019. And the composition of the misdemeanor population changed. As you can see by this chart, the top 5 misdemeanor charges in 2019, before the pandemic, included many individuals booked for drug use, drug possession, and public conduct charges. In 2021, most bookings were related to violations of restraining orders, contempt of court charges, and driving under the influence. We know that pre-COVID in 2019, a daily average of 498 people were in custody on misdemeanor charges. More recently, that number has been 100 to 150. However, that population today, while not in our county jails, is also not consistently connected to services to address their criminal behavior and their underlying needs. Racial, ethnic, geographic, and other inequities persist in the justice system as they do in other places in the country in health, wealth, and education. Residents tell us about their experiences in public systems, and we see the inequities in the data. For example, only 5% of San Diego County residents are Black, but Black individuals consistently compose about 1/5 of the jail population. Additional disproportionalities persist too, with an overrepresentation of people in jail who are homeless, mentally ill, struggling with addiction, and those who have deep traumas. As directed, we have contracted with a consultant, Sandag, who will analyze criminal justice and community data to develop a more complete view of the changes in jail population and the key drivers of those changes. This data analysis, along with thoughtful stakeholder engagement of existing services and gaps, will lead to a comprehensive recommendation for the justice system with a special focus on advancing equity. The work to address longstanding inequities is the charge of the full county enterprise, and success will depend on services and systems in the Public Safety Group, the Health and Human Services Agency, and partnerships with community stakeholders. The county's related homeless policy on today's agenda is just one example of that effort. At the direction of your board, the criminal justice partners convene numerous times to discuss potential expansions to community programs and services that will result in keeping jail populations low while preserving public safety. The beginning of the community input process was launched during a community forum held on the evening of January 19. Justice and health system stakeholders have been key to building the proposals for immediate actions, and multi-agency support is necessary for any system change. This is the beginning of a more than year-long project. Going forward, it will be critical to integrate individuals and communities most affected by justice system policies and programs in the analysis, the proposed solutions, and the program design. Sandag will convene an ongoing stakeholder advisory group and additional community input forums to shape its analysis and recommendations. The first community forum, led by county staff, was January 19th and was attended by more than 60 diverse stakeholders who included social justice activists, formerly justice-involved people, county and independent service providers, and people with experience participating in publicly funded services. Feedback included the desire for additional non-law enforcement options to assist people in crisis, the importance of accessibility as it relates to treatment, the availability of robust reentry services, and quality substance use disorder and mental health programs and services. There is also the persistent need to address the root causes of addiction, mental health struggles, poverty, and the cycle of rearrest. There are numerous intercept points where successful services are currently offered to individuals in lieu of custody, which is reflected in the low number of misdemeanors in custody in our jails. I will describe a few of the off-ramps offered by the criminal justice partners, and in a few minutes, Dr. Luke Bergman from Health and Human Service Agency's Behavioral Health Services We'll address the many new county programs and services which are intended to expand recovery and provide health and housing resources, which in turn will assist in keeping people out of the justice system. Pretrial services staff in the Sheriff's Department and probation will connect individuals to services in the community and facilitate release from jail at arraignment. Both in the District Attorney's Office and the City Attorney have successful programs that offer case dismissal for individuals with low-level nonviolent misdemeanors who complete a program or service. San Diego also has numerous longstanding collaborative courts that provide supervised sentences to needed services and supports in lieu of a jail sentence. That helps address the root causes of an individual's criminal behavior. And the Sheriff, Probation, and Health and Human Services Agency offer reentry services, which we will review and include community input as this work continues. The criminal justice partners recognize a need for expanded services for individuals whose substance use, lack of housing, and mental health issues contribute to criminal behavior. There is broad support for increasing alternatives to incarceration in the form of sobering centers and transitions to care coordination for individuals who commit nonviolent misdemeanors. Before I describe our proposals to address these issues, I would now like to turn the presentation over to Dr. Luke Bergman to briefly describe programs and services currently available in the community. Luke?
Thanks, Holly. In behavioral health services, we're working on transforming the behavioral health systems of care by focusing on 3 strategic domains: crisis and diversionary services, residential and long-term care, and behavioral health hubs with long-term care coordination. We anticipate that all of these domains have a role to play in helping us care for people with behavioral health needs outside of jails, and instead in the least restrictive and the most community-integrated settings possible. And we look forward to reshaping the continuum of behavioral health care in ways that will reduce justice involvement. While there's no doubt that establishing care coordination as a basic component of inpatient care and creating a network of residential and long-term care beds proportional to actual need will pay huge dividends, we broadly agree that crisis and diversionary services should be the area of first focus in keeping people with behavioral health issues out of jail. In our work to date in this domain, we've been focused primarily on diverting people with behavioral health conditions from expensive healthcare services in emergency departments or acute care settings, which often aren't able to connect people in need to the right kinds of ongoing care. We know, for example, through the pandemic, but also beforehand, that emergency departments have struggled to manage and even find space for the volumes of patients with behavioral health diagnoses that present to them. Our crisis stabilization units are already helping to address this issue. More recently, moreover, we've leaned into establishing resources to help those in behavioral health crisis avoid justice involvement and get the most expedient access to the right care in community settings. The Mobile Crisis Response Team program is the cornerstone of this effort. Our approach to establishing crisis and diversionary services is regional and aims to optimize how MCRTs and CSUs can together create a diversionary ecosystem that will have positive impacts on our county's behavioral health and that will instrumentally drive down hospitalizations and rates of incarceration among those with behavioral health conditions. CSUs, indicated on this slide by the orange pins, are 24/7 outpatient units that serve youth and adults who are experiencing a behavioral health crisis. 2021 saw an incredible expansion of this service, with the North Inland Hospital-based CSU at the Palomar Hospital campus in Escondido expanding from 8 to 16 recliners. The South Region Hospital-based CSU at Paradise Valley Hospital opening with 12 recliners in April. The North Coastal Community-based CSU in Vista becoming operational with 12 recliners in October. And the North Coastal LiveWell Center community-based CSU in Oceanside estimated to open in spring of 2022 with 12 recliners, and with planning underway for an additional community-based CSU in East County. While our hospital-based CSUs are important to manage ongoing behavioral health flow into emergency departments and to divert inpatient admissions, community-based CSUs, which can be proximate to but aren't formally within hospital systems, have the advantage of much faster drop-off times for law enforcement and easier access for some community members. A look at the recently opened Vista CSU gives us a glimpse into the utility of this service. Between its opening in October and the end of December, so in its first couple of months of operations, the Vista CSU opened 832 cases, with 357 law enforcement referrals and 21 MCRT drop-offs during that time. 94% of these cases resulted in connection to outpatient community care and supports, as opposed to hospitalization. As your board is aware, MCRTs, indicated on this slide by the blue pins, are community services which provide an alternative to law enforcement response. Teams are comprised of licensed mental health clinicians, case managers, and peer support specialists who can respond to behavioral health crisis calls that don't involve recognized threats of violence or medical emergencies. These clinical teams provide behavioral health assessments, de-escalation, and connect individuals to the appropriate levels of care to include the county's behavioral health care system and other community partners. Through the end of December, approximately 400 unique clients received services through MCRTs. 15% presented as homeless, and of the clients served, 191 were people who had previously been in care and were reconnected to behavioral health services, and an additional 102 were new clients connected to services for the first time. Clients served through our network of MCRTs and CSUs reflect the diversity of our county. For MCRTs, those receiving services have ranged from under 18 to over 60 years of age, with most folks receiving services being between 26 and 59 years old. And among clients served, 186 have identified as female, 210 as male, and 2 as other. In both MCRTs and CSUs, rates of engagement and service provision reflect the racial and ethnic makeup of our county, though generally MCRT and CSUs have engaged a proportionally higher rate of African Americans and lower rate of Asian and Pacific Islanders than is reflected in our county's overall population. A complement to the growing network of CSUs and MCRTs are the sobering services and prosecution and law enforcement assisted diversion services, or PLEADS programs, indicated on this map by the black pin. The county has collaborated with the City of San Diego to establish the first instance of these programs, which provide for light touch, observational care, and space and time for people who are intoxicated and would otherwise be arrested, usually for public intoxication and booked in jail, to become stable enough to safely return home while also getting connected to services or additional health and behavioral health care. The Sobering Services Program is open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and provides space for inebriated individuals dropped off by health, safety, and law enforcement agencies to be kept a minimum of 4 hours. Staff ensure the safety of people dropped off and offer information on substance use treatment and recovery services, and also make individual counseling and linkage available once clients there have regained functioning. The PLEADS program, which is offered within the same space and site, is available 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, and provides space for people intoxicated and determined to be under the influence of other substances, often methamphetamine. Anticipated lengths of stay for this cohort are also at least 4 hours, and additional engagement, referral, linkage, and transportation services are offered as a part of this program as well. Strikingly, in 2021, 88% of those served in the PLEADS program self-reported being homeless at the time of service. Around 1/5 of clients accepted treatment as a follow-up to PLEADS. And while this number may seem low, with what we know about the challenges in engaging the population of people who are homeless and suffering with substance use disorder, we find these results encouraging. With reported increase in numbers of law enforcement encounters with people who are intoxicated with methamphetamine or other drugs, sometimes independent of and sometimes concurrent with alcohol inebriation, there's an opportunity to expand higher acuity capacity within the sobering and PLEADS programs. As we look to the future, and with an acknowledgement of the frequency of co-occurring mental illness and substance use, we hope also to explore an enhanced coordination of substance use stabilization through these sorts of programs with our growing network of crisis stabilization units. Now I'll turn it back to Holly, who will provide additional detail on the enhancements proposed.
Thank you, Luke. Sobering services like the PLEADS program in the city of San Diego allows officers to keep individuals out of jail, provides a warm handoff to a community resource, and allows the officer to quickly return to service. In the coming budget cycle, we will recommend the expansion of these sobering services to include a focus on care transitions, and will work with Health and Human Services Agency to contract with providers. We will seek to increase the capacity of the Central Sobering Center to care for high acuity clients such as those on meth or other substances. We will examine the hours of operation for the Central Sobering Services and make recommendations for changes as appropriate. In the coming months, a working group of criminal justice partners and stakeholders will work to determine where in the county additional sobering services are needed most and how much capacity should be added in the community for integrated substance use disorder services to follow the short-term sobering services. Health and Human Services Agency and public safety groups see an opportunity to explore the co-location of sobering services with crisis stabilization units. These are important facilities that allow for law enforcement drop-off and service connections rather than jail bookings for people who do not pose a public safety threat. Also, a collaborative advisory group of public agency and community stakeholders will inform implementation and monitoring of these proposals and the development of future recommendations. The working group has looked in particular at low-level drug and public conduct charges such as public intoxication, disturbing the peace, trespassing, under the influence, and minor drug possession charges as good candidates for law enforcement diversion to a sobering center. Reviewing data from 2017 to 2019, there were an average of 3,927 individuals with over 5,000 field arrest bookings for misdemeanor drug use and possession. These are individuals whose jail booking contained only those listed charges. During that same 3-year period, there were an average of 5,166 individuals with over 7,000 field arrest bookings for misdemeanor public conduct charges, including disturbing the peace, trespassing, disorderly conduct, and drunken public. These numbers are significant, and this is the population that we propose as our focus for potential diversion and off-ramps from the justice system. However, it's critical to point out that these individuals do not have a significant impact on jail average daily population because they are not in jail for long periods of time. In fact, they often do not make it past jail intake and into jail housing. Average daily population in the jails is a snapshot of the number of people in jail at midnight, and many individuals charged with these remain in jail for 24 hours or less. So while the booking numbers may seem high, the impact on average daily jail population is low. The impact to average daily jail population from diverting these individuals to a community service or program is expected to be in the hundreds, not thousands. The booking numbers are a strong indicator, however, of people who are in need of a social service intervention. The criminal justice partners are also exploring a pre-booking review of individuals who commit low-level misdemeanors. That means individuals transported to jail on nonviolent misdemeanors would be reviewed before booking for safety risk, needs, and suitability for an alternative to incarceration. Individuals assessed as low risk could be referred for an immediate alternative to incarceration, such as completing a program or engaging in a community service or treatment in lieu of booking. The details of this pre-booking review and referral process are part of the ongoing discussion. The working group has identified several significant challenges, such as the need to establish a secure facility where the pre-booking safety and needs assessment would be conducted. This process would also take the arresting officer out of service for a longer period of time, posing issues for law enforcement. So these are challenges for the working group to explore as the group determines the overall feasibility of pre-booking off-ramps in lieu of booking into county jail. Meanwhile, the Public Safety Group and Health and Human Services Agency are committed to continuing to explore the expansion of law enforcement diversion options in the community that will benefit the individual while also protecting public safety. SANDAG started their work with the county in late January, and we are implementing their project plan. They are collecting data from the criminal justice partners to inform future policy recommendations and assist us in estimating volumes, defining gaps in programs and services, and advising future investments. SANDAG will formalize the stakeholder advisory group, and I would also like to take this opportunity to introduce Andrea Pella as the county's new Director of Prevention, Diversion, and Reentry. She started work in this position a month ago and will be working with SANDAG and leading this important work. As previously directed, SANDAG has several scheduled returns to the board to present their work. The Public Safety Group and SANDAG will return with recommendations for future budget cycles as reflected on this slide. And this is a reminder that this analysis and project has just begun. So in closing, today's recommendations are to receive a preliminary report on data-driven alternatives to incarceration, to authorize the Chief Administrative Officer to enhance the capabilities of sobering services in the Central Region to serve higher acuity clients and provide successful care transitions, to refer funding for sobering service capabilities to fiscal year 2022-24 CAO recommended op plan, and finally to authorize the Chief Administrative Officer to explore further integration of sobering services in current and future crisis stabilization units and include any recommendations in the scheduled returns to the board regarding data-driven alternatives to incarceration. And that concludes our presentation. I do want to note that we have several members of the working group that are joining us here today, and I want to thank them for their participation, including Supervising Criminal Judge Michael Groach, who is here with us today. Thank you.
All right, thank you to the whole team, and we welcome our judicial partners joining with us today as well. Thank you for being here. Let's hear from the public speakers on this item, and then we'll come back to the board.
Thank you, Chair Fletcher. We have 10 requests to speak on this item. Also note for the record that we received 6 e-comments, all in favor. Any members of the public that requested to speak on item 11 by phone, please dial into the conference line now using the instructions that were provided to you. When it is your turn to speak, you will be unmuted and you will hear a recording that will tell you to begin your comments after the beep. You will have 2 minutes to address the board. We'll ask you to please begin by stating your name for the audio record. And I'll remind the callers that they should mute their TV or live video stream before they begin speaking. We'll begin with our first caller.
Good morning. This is Zeke Sandoval with PATH, People Assisting the Homeless, in support of the item. We really appreciate Supervisor Lawson-Remer's dedication to pursuing alternatives to incarceration and for ensuring that stakeholders like PATH are an integral part of the conversation. These discussions have been collaborative and engaging, with everyone involved committed to solutions that can provide lasting positive impacts to people experiencing homelessness. While not all unhoused individuals have challenges with addiction, there remains a great need for services, and we commend the supervisor for focusing on short and long-term strategies to generate greater access to sobering centers across the region. So this, along with all the improved care coordination and data integration, could really make a meaningful difference in our collective efforts. We remain committed to these approaches and to the continued conversation about other alternatives to incarceration, and we urge the board to support the item. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hello, I'm Nancy Gannon-Hornberger, CEO of Safe San Diego and a District 3 resident, calling in support of the recommendation. Data-driven approaches to public safety, treatment, and service expansion will help to advance racial and social equity through alternatives to incarceration. At Safe San Diego, we agree with the initial recommendation to continue to include sobering services, crisis stabilization, and other community and family-connected alternatives to incarceration in the 22-24 CAO Ops Plan. Safe San Diego, a community-serving nonprofit, currently and historically has supported justice-involved youth and adults and their families using strengths-based, restorative, and trauma-informed approaches. Last year alone, we helped nearly 1,000 San Diego County youth and adults charged with offenses to restore their lives while preventing recidivism. Significant research and the success of other jurisdictions across the country demonstrate that these recommended approaches are significantly more racially equitable and just, better for public health and safety, and a better use of tax dollars. We have experienced the effectiveness of non-law enforcement options that safely address the needs of community residents who could be jailed or detained for criminal offenses when their primary unmet needs include unstable housing and homelessness, mental health and substance abuse treatment needs, and poverty. Therefore, we agree that it is vital to listen deeply and respond to the most affected communities and individuals with lived experience. The county has also taken an important step, just mentioned, to create and staff a new position for a director to guide and coordinate alternatives to incarceration.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Judith Howell, and I'm calling on behalf of the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition, and as a resident of District 4. I'm in support of item 11, and I appreciate what Supervisor Lawson Raymer's office is doing to address public safety and to include community input in the planning stages. I hope the county will take more proactive actions to address public safety and the over-policing of Black, Brown, and Indigenous people, and continue to work with community partners in the early planning stages. Lives will be spared when we move away from punitive and exploitive practices and towards restorative practices that not only keep people alive, but provide an opportunity to receive care and rehabilitation. Police are more likely to use lethal force when attending to an emergency call when a person is experiencing psychiatric distress. My friend Kylie Carolino experienced the death of her uncle outside of her bedroom when the police were called to do a safety check while her uncle was experiencing a psychiatric episode. His name was Dennis Carolino, and he died in his home where his niece Kylie and his aunt were present. He was 52, and he forgot to take his medication. He needed help, and instead he died. In 2019, KPBS reported that 65% of San Diego police shootings happened less than 5 minutes after an officer arrives on the scene. The police have become the first point of access to mental health support for many underfunded communities. We need less police and more healthcare professionals with trauma-informed care, empathy, and compassion for people who are suffering and in need of medical attention. And I emphasize having trauma-informed healthcare providers because many people who are brought into hospitals for treatment can also be criminalized by healthcare providers who don't have trauma-informed care. And lastly, the county must prioritize the needs of transitional youth to reduce recidivism and provide opportunities to include, but not limited to, mental health resources, housing, and employment opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from the next caller.
Good afternoon. Again, our wonderful Board of Supervisors. My name is Sandy Muskowski. I've lived in San Diego County for 20 years now. I was fortunate to be amongst the upper middle class as a homeowner, working full time as a researcher at UCSD, and I also have lived experience in homelessness and poverty. It is imperative that the county continue to utilize its resources to continue the work that has begun here with crisis response and sobering centers and addressing mental health conditions and preventing them from ending up in our criminal justice system. I do ask that data continue to be collected, and the wonderful work that these presenters have done and their teams have done to collect data, to please continue this work and consider the effect that poverty has on people's actions that affect their entrance into the criminal justice system. For example, robbery, burglary, and often violence occur as parts of competition for limited resources by people experiencing poverty. While I've been homeless, I have myself been had violence enacted upon me, potential lethal violence, and it is not acceptable that these experiences put more individuals into the criminal justice system when they could have been assisted with more equitable opportunities to fill gaps that have caused them to live in poverty. It's also unacceptable to have continuing communal shelter systems. That's another thing that's going to need to be addressed. And as well as expanding housing services for people coming out of incarceration so that they don't continue to persist in the cycle of poverty and homelessness. And again, I thank you for starting to take action on these recommendations that has been presented here.
Now hear from the next caller.
Hi, this is Chris Olson, Chief of Staff with Jewish Family Services San Diego. We're calling in today to thank Supervisor Lawson Reamer and her staff and all the members of the working group for their real, true collaboration on this effort. And we're also calling in support of the recommendations. This really represents an opportunity to align the work of our justice system with the broader efforts of this board and our county on issues around behavioral health and maximizing the work of our continuum of care for people experiencing homelessness and other challenges. And then lastly, it also represents an opportunity to look at resource efficiency, improving and getting the best outcomes for people and also using public resources most efficiently to really direct funds towards programs that will be most effective. And we just, again, express our appreciation for the work of the working group and our support of the recommendations, including budgetary recommendations for the coming budget year. Thank you.
Thank you. Now hear from the next caller.
Audra. So I love how you guys think you can do data-driven approaches, kind of like your COVID data. I mean, is it going to be totally bogus? Because if you understood that your COVID policies are the actual reason for all of these problems, you wouldn't be, doing that to the people. But there's less people incarcerated since 2019 and 20 till 2021. So why would you wait until now to act like, oh my gosh, there's a big problem, we need to do something about it? Well, maybe you should think about not arresting people for public conduct that you don't like, I don't know, clapping at one of the meetings and then, taking a 60-plus-year-old woman to Las Colinas to leave her there for like 8 hours. Yeah, that's probably something that you guys should start thinking about, because you're creating all of these issues just like you do all the time. Like homelessness, why would you arrest somebody and put them in jail for being homeless? I thought you're trying to, mitigate these things. And all of these, programs that you have never come into fruition. Like you start them and act like, oh, and I mean, Nathan, you just said you deal with homelessness all the time, yet there's a growing number. It's not getting better. It's actually getting worse. Just like when you vaccinate more people, the cases get worse. So whatever your data-driven approach is, I would like to know if you're going to have somebody outside of your circle also give data to show what's really going on, because your COVID policies are making it so that nobody can even go to court and see anybody. So, I mean, and the fact that, if you steal over just under $1,000, they're not going to arrest you. What about also the fact that you have a lack of officers to even do any of this, like any kind of mitigation, but yet you also want to just bring in mobile crisis response teams for everything.
Thank you.
I'll
hear from the next caller.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry. Hello, my name is Blair Overstreet, an organizer with the Center on Policy Initiatives, the convener of the Invest in San Diego Families Coalition, and I'm calling today to register CPI support for the county's investment and work on this research on alternatives to incarceration, and to urge that impacted communities be heavily involved in providing solutions, that the research be expanded to include felonies, and that our county budget this year reflect this commitment to true public safety by disrupting the yearly pattern of increased sheriff budgets and instead put that money towards these alternatives. For years, people in San Diego County have been providing data in the form of testimony about their lived experiences, highlighting the lack of safety in county jails and at the hands of sheriff deputies, and have been advocating for policies and for services such as these that would actually help keep people safe. So should the board support the recommendation to create an advisory board, we hope that the majority of the seats on the board will be filled by these experts, formerly incarcerated people and their families. As stated in this report, in order to reduce the amount of people in jail, the Sheriff's Department must stop arresting people for misdemeanors, and the county should allocate more funding to mental health care and substance abuse recovery. Additionally, I hope the county will expand to felonies when it comes to providing alternatives to incarceration, as they account for the largest population in jails, and many felonies are not actually threats to public safety. Finally, last week the state auditor released findings that confirm what community members have said for years. San Diego's jails had more in-custody deaths than every other county in the state other than Los Angeles County. According to research released by the Police Scorecard Project, the San Diego Sheriff's Department receives more funding per capita than 80% of the departments in the United States. Yet the same department released a statement claiming that these recommendations will require substantial investment in the existing jail system. They do not need more money. They need fewer people in contact with them and in their custody in order to keep us safe. That's why the county must invest in alternatives to incarceration and invest in the things that keep us safe, like stable housing, access to quality jobs, and health.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now hear from the next caller.
Hello, yes. My name is Layla Aziz, and I would like to thank Supervisor Lawson Reamer and the other supervisors for this important step in creating true community safety. We have a few recommendations we would like the CAO to add in her letter. We need a paradigm shift, which should include people with lived experience and community workers as part of the advisory board and the RFP reviewers for any funding. That includes the pre-trial funding we're going to talk about in the next item. We would like the county to look at the Humphrey decision when testing this operational plan, and we would also like to look at expanding that definition of nonviolent misdemeanors. Most felonies listed in the penal code are nonviolent. Supervisor Lawson Reamer spoke of the need for the buy-in of all law enforcement partners, including police, sheriff, city attorney, and district attorney. This is a must. We have been court watching and believe the DA and judges are not following the law in regards to Humphrey, and instead are keeping people in custody regardless of their ability to pay. We are holding on to the dinosaur policy that a person who is wealthy deserves to leave jail and a person who is poor deserves to stay in jail. Participatory defense is one of those programs, and although we would never seek funding, we have a 98% court show-up and 3% recidivism rate since our work began in 2017. When families are involved in participatory defense, they show up to court and don't reoffend while out on their own recognizance or cash bail. With our bail fund, we found that the court rate was slightly higher when they did not participate in participatory defense, the court show-up rate. When community members were bailed out and attended participatory defense, they showed up to court and did not reoffend. Community support is a better indicator than cash bail. We need a uniform definition of what constitutes a violent crime. There are no violent misdemeanors. Violent crimes are listed in Penal Code 667.5. Most of the felonies listed in California's Penal Code are nonviolent. The court decision needs to guide our operational plan for release of both felonies and misdemeanors immediately, and that's in regards to Humphrey. Let's lean on social service providers already doing the work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Now hear from the next caller.
Good afternoon. This is John Brady, Director of Lived Experience Advisors. We're a group of individuals that have experienced homelessness. We are 100% in support of this proposal put forth by Tara Lawson Reamer and hope that the board will support it unanimously. It is time to break the cycle of homelessness and incarceration and invest in solutions that will move people on with their lives. I also want to echo many of the comments that were already stated by PATH and Jewish Family Services and other providers I don't need to repeat them here. Thank you for putting this forward, and have a great day.
Thank you. And Chair Fletcher, that concludes public comment on this item.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Supervisor Lawson-Remer first, who initiated this action, and then we'll hear from any other colleagues who wish to speak on this item.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair Fletcher. First of all, I just really want to thank staff for moving quickly on such a big initiative. Back in October, I brought a board action to take a data-driven approach to public safety. And I thank my colleagues for supporting that action, especially my colleague Nora Vargas for co-authoring a resolution the same day to address the inequities we have in our criminal legal system through alternatives and a focus on root causes. This is not something that any one person or organization can undertake alone. What we see here today is tremendous. In just a short time, the working group has already identified 9,000 people that should not be in a jail. 9,000 people each year who should be served by alternative services rather than jail. And the working group has begun the process of designing and developing those facilities and services to serve as alternatives to incarceration in our community. I'm very happy to see that the first short-term proposal includes an inclusive stakeholder advisory group that centers voices of impacted individuals. That is vital. We are talking here about systems and populations, not one program, service provider, or department, but a coordinated, collaborative approach to our justice system. I'm so grateful that that's how our county departments have approached this work, to dig in, build consensus, and work thoughtfully about what we can do in the short and long term. We know that not all 9,000 individuals may be successfully diverted, but focusing on the specific population for the initial time being gives us an immediate path forward. There are two things that I hear time and again. We don't have places for people to go, and we don't have the data infrastructure. That's why today I'm particularly excited about the expansion and improvement of the PLEADS program, crisis stabilization units, and the community support that item 12 outlines for pretrial services. Although we are discussing item 11, these two items very clearly intersect and build on each other. So I do want to take a moment to thank staff for your initiative and proactive work to bring this really important and impactful idea forward in item 12. When the state makes funding available, as they did with SB 129 to support pretrial services, we need to go after it. None of this happens without funding, so I would like to acknowledge the county staff that's identifying funding opportunities to help our local communities and bring those dollars here. Our neighbors experiencing homelessness are far too often swept up and put into jails, and I'd like to see what options we have specifically for individuals experiencing housing insecurity who are justice involved. To take a data-driven approach, we need the data. I urge staff to truly lean in and take action on this issue of data integration. We need data integration to be able to even understand the problem and the gaps in our system. And also, vitally, we need data integration to coordinate care. We're responsible for the people under our care, and we must be able to coordinate services. The state jails audit report released last week showed once again that we have far too many deaths in our jails, and this is a tragedy. Our jails are not a safe place to be, particularly for people with mental illness or substance abuse disorders. So this report is a great first step in the right direction in keeping some of those folks out of jail, if at all possible. All big change happens step by step. So thank you to all of those who are engaged in this process, and I look forward to continuing to partner with all of you over the next few years as we drive the big changes we need to see to protect our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Go to Supervisor Desmond.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. I just want to say thank you very much for the report. And yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, our homeless population, our behavioral health population, they get the biggest help right now in our jails. So I just think that's sort of a tragedy. However, I do want to clarify that our existing CSU that just opened in October, this is not part of the pilot program to co-locate sobering services in this item. Just want to check with staff on that. The one that just opened.
For Supervisor Desmond on that real quick.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Desmond. We are going to explore the coordination of this sobering service with a CSU initially in East County, which is where we aim to stand up the next community-based CSU. So it's a sort of natural opportunity to kind of build into that the best model for coordination as a demonstration project. Thank you.
Okay. Well, yeah, I just think it's a little too soon since this one just opened to try to change the scope. We had some siting issues there to get it there, and I don't think rocking the boat right now is the right time. However, though, we do need sobering services. And right now, one of our cities, North County, and I noticed the sobering service center is right in the center of the city of San Diego as opposed to anywhere else in the county. But actually right now, the city of Oceanside is actually funding the majority of a sobering center. We are providing some gap money, but they're doing that that sobering program, and usually the county does programs, and the cities we hopefully can provide some housing. So I'm just curious if it might be something that staff could look at as potentially maybe taking over or investing more into the program, into the sobering program that's in Oceanside, and maybe offsetting some of their dollars, so maybe they can free up some of their dollars for potential affordable housing, something like that. It'd be a good partnership, I think, for a sobering center, county run in a North County, and maybe more money for the cities to provide that housing attribute. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Desmond. I appreciate the work, all of the diligence that's gone into this. I think the addition of the sobering centers is a welcome addition to everything else that we're doing around better meeting the need for behavioral health services. And so excited to continue to see this work go forward and appreciate all the work that's been done. I'll make a motion to approve the recommendations in this item. Is there a second?
I'll second. It's okay. My colleague, Vice Chair Vargas, can have it. I appreciate all her support.
It's your initiative. I just was waiting for you.
All right, so we've got a motion by myself, a second by Vice Chair Vargas. Not seeing any additional requests to speak on this item. Let me have the clerk go ahead and call the roll, please.
Thank you. Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Lawson-Remer.
Aye.
Supervisor Desmond.
Aye.
Vice Chair Vargas.
Vargas, aye.
Chair Fletcher.
Fletcher, aye.
That motion passes unanimously with all supervisors being present and voting aye.
It is 12:23. We are going to break for lunch. We will reconvene and start on agenda item 11 at 1 p.m. We will reconvene at 1 p.m. sharp and pick up our agenda at that point. Thank you all.